Hello.
Hi.
Hello, everybody. How are y'all doing? Just real quick, if you can hear us, just comment in the live chat real quick just to make sure that we're good to go because it would be the worst thing ever to just keep on talking and nobody can hear us. But yeah, so hey, everybody. My name is David.
And my name's Brian.
And welcome back to Now Let's Be Honest. Today we are going to we're going to break down The Chosen Season 4, episodes 1 through 3. And basically, the way this whole thing is going to go down is that we are going to start off with a non-spoiler chat for those of y'all who haven't seen it yet, because we do want to honor that. And then after we've done a non-spoiler chat for a little bit, I will give a clear warning, and we will even have a banner along the bottom that says spoilers, so that whenever you come in here, you will know that we are in spoiler territory. And so, yeah, that's basically how this is going to go down. Real quick. Okay, it says they can hear us. That is the main thing that matters. I just wanted to make sure we're good to go there. Cool. Well, real quick, we're not going to waste any time here. First off, it's been a while since Brianne's been on the YouTube channel, right? She's been here, but it's mainly been me kind of holding down this channel. But how are you doing, Brianne?
I'm doing really good. Yeah. I realized before we filmed this video that I haven't been on in a really long time. Maybe since like one of the Hesed videos or something. I don't know. It's been a really long time.
Did you do any of season 3 with me at all?
I don't know if I did.
Or we did some. We did live chats.
Did we do? Didn't we do like a ranking too? Or am I
we might have. Oh, we didn't do a ranking for seasons 1 through 3. I did, but you didn't do one with there. But you did. I think the last one you did is, remember, we got to watch the last 2 episodes of season 3 early.
Oh,
because I was in Israel at this time last year.
Yes.
And they were airing the last 2 episodes of season 3 at that time period. Yes. And so they gave it to like me and the Snipes and stuff so we could watch it early.
Yes.
And we got to film that. So that's probably the last time you were on this channel.
Yeah, probably.
Wow.
It's been a while.
But yeah. Hello, everybody. We can see you in the live chat. Let me just like put some of y'all's stuff up here real quick. We can hear you. I can hear you. That's good. Hello, everyone. Good. It's great to see y'all. Real quick, we're just going to hop right in here just so that we can try to be efficient here. Let me just put this non-spoiler section tag at the bottom so that for anybody clicking in here, they will know that we are in the non-spoiler section first. And basically what we're going to do here is I just got a whole lot of notes right here on my phone. I felt kind of bad for the person who was sitting next to us in the theater. I had my phone turned down on like minimal brightness.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I knew we were going to be doing this video. And so I was taking notes as we were watching it, right? I was just like breaking down the plot structure just so that we would have like we could kind of be organized whenever we did this thing. And the poor person right next to me, like he just got up and like moved over to another seat. I think it was just distracting him a little bit. But I basically have notes here, and we're gonna start off for the spoiler-free section. Basically, I have 4 pros and 4 cons, and then I've got these 3 episodes ranked, and we're gonna share those. And how many pros and cons do you have?
I have 2 pros and 2 cons.
2 pros and 2 cons.
Yeah, so
all right.
Half.
Yeah, as you can tell, I am a little bit more opinionated.
Yeah.
Which is why I probably get in more trouble on YouTube for stuff I say. But yeah, so I've got 4 pros. She's got 2 pros.
Yeah.
And we'll just kind of go back and forth there. And then we'll share our cons. And then we'll kind of rank these episodes in our opinions. And as we're doing this, be sure to let us know your opinions in the live chat. And in the comments, because we want to know that. And the whole reason we're doing this live is because we like to interact with you guys, right? If not, we could have just made this video and just published it. But we're doing it live because we like to talk with y'all. And so just let us know. Maybe we'll do, even though you have less pros, let's just start with you because ladies first, right? It's just on principle.
Okay.
All right. What is your first pro? Non-spoiler, once again.
Yeah.
What is your first pro for The Chosen Season 4, episodes 1 through 3?
My first pro is just the cinematography in general. I thought it was really good quality. I don't know, even like the lighting and like, I don't know, the filters I guess they used on it. It just looked really good. And especially, I mean, I noticed it like from the beginning, but especially whenever they did like a flashback to season 1. I don't remember what episode that was in, but they did a flashback at one point, and you really got to see how much it's changed from whenever they started to how it is now.
For sure.
And just like the clarity of the picture and the quality of it, it was really nice.
Yep.
And so that's my first pro. The cinematography is just on point.
Well, it looks like we were kind of on the same page there. We did not talk about this ahead of time, mind you, but my first pro is word for word, huge up in production value. Episode 1 in particular felt like it was made for the theater. Whenever we get to the spoiler section, I'll talk about exactly what I'm thinking about, but there was literally one scene in episode 1 where I was just watching it and I was like, wow, we have come so far from season 1. Like season 1, I think just from a sentimental perspective, I think season 1 is still my favorite season of the show. But it's crazy whenever you compare just the production value, how far we've come.
Yeah.
Right? Because season 1 was really good for what it was, but there are certain scenes and things that were accomplished in this, like in just in these 3 episodes, where I was like, wow,
Yeah.
I would never have imagined watching season 1 that we would have been at this high quality production.
And I would say, well, I guess this might be kind of a spoiler, but before the show ever starts, there's something that they show you that kind of tells you about where they filmed all of it. Like
Oh, I don't, that's not really a spoiler. We can
Okay.
probably talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, well, I was going to say that you get to see really how much it grew because in the very beginning, they have this like cool drone shot situation going on
Yeah.
where they're like flying a drone through the set where they film and all of the different rooms and everything. And you just see how much bigger of a production it's become, but also just how high quality like it is. Like, it's just the sets are very intricate. They're very elaborate. And they look really good, and they have a lot of separate sets and everything, you know, to where they're not just reusing just one of them. They have a whole bunch of different ones.
Yeah.
And it looks just really good, which is very different from season 1 also.
Yeah, no, that drone shot they showed was awesome.
Really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you're watching, and whoever was flying it was really good. It was kind of almost like nauseating. We were talking about that.
Yeah,
it's like
I
you're
think
zooming
that's just
through.
how drones are. Yeah,
but
they're quickly turning.
it is crazy how big the set is, and just even the format of it was just actually kind of cool. Just seeing
really
that.
was.
But also we talked about this. This is just so this is like years ago now. There was this one time where we went to like the Salvation Army place,
Oh no.
and we thought that we had located
It's on
where they filmed. It's on this YouTube channel.
Is it
somewhere.
on this one? Or
Yeah,
is it on the
no, it's on
okay.
this one.
Yeah.
Where we thought we had found the place where they filmed The Chosen.
Yeah.
And they commented and said that like we were at the wrong place. But in the background of the video was the exact parking lot we were standing at. And so I'm just saying, we were at the right place. Y'all were just concealing it, which is funny. Okay, sorry. We got somebody saying the drone shot was really cool.
It was.
They all said season 2 as a whole was, I guess their favorite. But season 1, episode 1, and episode 8's all-time favorites. Very cool. And then season 3 is my favorite season. Well, look at that. So we got people all over the place. I'm season 1. We got season 2, season 3. Well, it looks like everybody just likes all the seasons of The Chosen.
Yeah.
That's good. Okay. Next pro. So both of us, our first pro was cinematography, right? Up in value, really good. What's your second pro?
Okay, so mine.
You said you only had 2, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I mean, this one is. I mean, I guess this one could be separated into, but I've lumped them together because they go in the same conversation. So I put a decrease in comedy and an increase in seriousness and character development. And when I say that, I think I'm specifically referring to the previous season, like last season. I think that I've said this on videos before. I think my like biggest, I guess, con from the last seasons was that there was a lot of like comedy, and sometimes I felt like it was like not warranted, or it kind of made it to where it almost was like one step too far, to where it almost felt like borderline cheesy a little bit. And something about The Chosen that I've really liked is it's very different from other like Christian movies and Christian media. And so whenever they're doing that, I was like, I don't like love that. But whenever we were watching the episodes yesterday, I thought they did a really good job at integrating like comedy and like comedic relief to like show that the characters are real people, right? Because people back then were not just like these stoic figures. Like they had a sense of humor also. So I like that they used comedy, but I thought it was balanced much more well in this season or these 3 episodes, than it was in last season as a whole. So that would be like a decrease in comedy, but increase in seriousness, just because the plot is getting more serious with certain events that are going to happen that I'm not going to talk about because we're doing spoiler free. And then also to go along with that, just like character development. If you've ever heard me talk about anything that I like, it's always that I like movies and shows if they have really good character development. And the thing about last season was that I felt like sometimes the comedy kind of took away from that. And so the way that they've kind of blended that into the seriousness and kind of like the plot of the season, I think it's enhancing the character development now more. And so I really appreciate that. So that's my other prompt.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's always been comedy throughout the show. I mean, you go back to season 1, there was always comedy, but I think this is like the thing that we've noticed in particular is that in season 3, it really seemed like in many times the comedy stole from the impact of certain scenes, and it almost felt like when you're watching the Marvel movies, right? It's almost like anytime there's like this serious moment, it feels like something comedic like breaks the drama of it.
Almost like it's like trying to shy away or something. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it happened every time in season 3, but it felt like for some reason the comedy just like seemed like it was really on the nose in season 3 to where I found myself laughing at the jokes.
Yeah.
But the end result is that it felt like it was just in general a less serious show.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas I think, and once again, that's just personal flavor, right?
Yeah.
For me, like I've always liked the jokes, but I think I like the show at its best
Yeah.
whenever it is more serious and then there's just jokes littered through.
Yeah.
And so, like you were saying, since we are getting into a little bit of the more serious material, I think it's more hitting that balance that I like.
Yeah.
Because I naturally like there just feels more weight to every scene. And so whenever there is comedy, it feels like it actually feels like a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't
What it's
feel
supposed
like
to be,
it doesn't feel shoehorned in. It doesn't feel
Mhm.
like, oh look, we're really funny. It doesn't feel like they're like winking at the camera. It genuinely feels like, oh yeah, people make jokes even in dark times, right? Like
Yeah.
to me, it felt more natural.
Yeah.
Which once again, we didn't talk at all. But my second pro, literally, the humor felt more balanced than last season. You can tell that her and I just seem to think a lot alike in
Yeah.
this regard because
Yeah.
so her 2 pros were also my 2 pros, and we did not talk about this.
Good thing I went first.
Yeah, but yeah, because it would seem like you were copying me.
Yeah.
No, but yeah. So I also agree that the humor of this just felt better. Once
Yeah.
again, I thought the humor was good in all the seasons, but to me, the balance that it struck
Mhm.
in these episodes
Mm.
was more fitting because like in the other seasons, it was like I kind of just came to and specifically in season 3.
Yeah.
The comedy was so like it felt so frequent that I didn't
Mhm.
even like I found it funny, but it was more like it would get like a little like where you like I didn't
Like
laugh.
that, yeah,
It
you
was
like
like
puff the air out of
a
your
little puff
nose.
of air out of my nose, and I
Yeah.
was like, okay, that's funny. Whereas in this one, it was like there would be jokes where I literally found myself laughing out loud, like in the
Yes.
theater. I was like, oh wow,
That was fun.
that was
Mhm.
funny, and it was just, and I think it's because it was unexpected, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like they were winking at the camera. It was like the person made the joke and then just moved on. I was like,
Uh-huh.
that was funny.
Yeah, I would say that I guess a big distinction between last season and this season is that sometimes the comedy felt directed at the audience, but this one it felt like I was having like someone was having a conversation with someone and the comedy was directed at the person, and
yeah.
therefore the audience that's watching laughs also because they're kind of, I don't know, immersing themselves in the situation.
Yeah, that's probably a good way
And
to
it
put
was, and it seemed more like realistic, which I think is important for The Chosen because something they've said from the beginning is talking about how they're trying to bring these biblical characters to life. Like they're
Mhm.
trying to show you that these are real people, these are real events that happen.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's good because the comedy is more realistic now, which
Yeah.
is good. That's like their whole goal, I think, through the show and through the characters that they're making and stuff.
Yeah, because I think in general, and we've talked about this a lot, both I've talked about it on camera and then we've talked about it off.
Mm.
I think season 3 in general felt the weakest to me because it felt the most like I was watching people playing in a show. Whereas like seasons
Right.
1 and 2, it genuinely felt like people like it felt like the characters had lives off screen.
Yes.
Whereas in season 3, something about the writing and like I think just the story they were trying to convey, and you know me, whenever I gripe about like the chronology and stuff like that, it felt like the people's lives ceased to exist
Yeah.
off screen.
Mhm.
And so whenever they were delivering their lines, it felt like they were delivering it more for the audience rather than to the characters. So
Yeah.
like exactly what you're saying is
Yeah.
I'm kind of agreeing with that.
Mhm.
Just comments here. I love the comedy, LOL, but that's just my nature, I guess. I do like the comedy as
Yeah.
well. I just thought season 3 was a little bit like not over the top, like it, because I liked it then too. To me, it just the comedy almost like took away from the impact of the rest of it.
Yeah.
Season 4 made it extremely real and serious. It honestly brought a reality check that this walk with Christ is no joke, which is what I'm looking forward to.
Mhm.
Just in my own personal ministry, whenever I preach and stuff like that, and her and I were talking about this just a few days ago, I think we need to emphasize more about the severity and the seriousness
Mm.
of what it means to be a disciple.
Yeah.
And so anytime there's an opportunity to emphasize that, I think it's something much needed in the Christian church.
Mm.
And so whenever they show stuff like that, I'm always going to be a big fan of that.
Yeah.
The show's maturing. I'm here for it.
Yes.
Me too. I think maturity is going to be really good.
Mhm.
I think I agree with the joke. Yeah, so they're agreeing there. Is season 4 worth seeing in theaters? I actually would say it is.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. We were not looking forward to it that much, mainly because it's like
Mhm.
it's long, right? And I'm assuming it has something to do with like the deal that they made with the theaters. Like the theaters probably didn't want to give up like that many screens to a Jesus show for like multiple months.
Mhm.
And so I imagine that they were like, okay, we got to fit it into the month of February, basically. And so they basically had like just a few weeks to get all of the episodes in there.
Mhm.
But man, like sitting there for like 3.5 hours,
It's a little tough.
it was tough, especially because like I don't get off work until like I don't get home till like 5:30ish. And so like
Yeah.
going like working all day from like 6 to 5:30, going to the movies at 7, like it felt really long to me. But given the up in production value,
Yeah,
I would actually
it
say that I
was.
really enjoyed seeing it in theaters.
I agree.
I think that it hit different, like especially episode 1. I think
Yes.
episode 1 would have hit different watching it at home on my
this
TV,
TV
and
screen.
stuff.
Yeah.
I think that seeing it in theaters, at least with episode 1 for sure.
Mm.
The other ones, I think it go both ways, but
Mm.
for some reason, episode 1 in particular, it felt cinematic to me, and so I would well, I guess it technically is cinematic because it's cinema, but it felt like it should have been seen in the theaters.
Yeah.
So if you have a chance, I would definitely go see that.
Mhm.
Okay, so you've already said your 2 pros.
Yeah. so
I
you
do
get
have 2
your
more.
Mhm.
One other pro I wanted to mention is that the fictional plot points mostly had clear purpose and direction.
Oh, that's
right.
a good one.
You'll notice that a lot of the pros that I'm listing out with season 4 are really just what seemed to me to be course corrections from season 3.
Mhm.
Season 3, I mean, once again, the whole show so far has been like 95% fictional, right? And 5% has been from the actual Bible, right?
Yeah.
And that's because they're trying to tie it all together. They're trying to make these characters fleshed out.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a problem with that. I don't really have a problem with that. But what I do have a problem with sometimes is whenever the fictional plot points don't seem to be heading anywhere, right? And in season 3, that was a big issue to me, to where it was like I would literally, like, there'd be some episodes where I was just watching it and I'd feel like I was getting bored, because I don't mind watching a fictional plot point if it seems like there's a direction it's heading. Because I mean, I don't only watch Bible shows, right? I watch plenty of other shows, and those are fictional shows, right? And so, I don't mind watching things with fictional plot points, but if it feels like it's just meandering, then I have a problem. And the fictional things that they introduced in this season, so far, what we've seen in episodes 1, 2, and 3, they at least seem to have clear direction, and I can see where they're kind of heading with it. And so thus far, it's been a little bit more tolerable to me, right? Whereas in season 3, I was like, oh my gosh, like there were so many times where, and once again, I liked all the episodes. I'm not trying to like,
No, yeah.
I'm just trying to contrast it.
Mhm.
Whenever I was watching season 3, there were times where I was like watching the episode and I was just wanting it to move to a new scene, mainly because I was like, let's just get to the biblical stuff. Because there's so many of the fictional plot points, just like, I mean, the scenes would be like 10 minutes long, and I'm like, it just seemed like unnecessary drama, right? And so the things that we see here in these first 3 episodes were very encouraging to me, because it seems like, I don't know, it seems like it was like I don't know, maybe they've heard people's feedback, or maybe it's just the nature of the story they're telling, that it all felt a little bit more connected, which I did really like. And then my 4th pro was that episode 1 was my favorite of these 3. And so I guess the pro is just that it's my favorite. Plot twist for how I'm going to rank it. But ironically, I would say that episode 1 felt the least like The Chosen, because just given the content, which we'll talk about when we get to the spoiler section, given the content of what episode 1 was about, it really wasn't focused as much on the disciples of Jesus. I guess it was kind of focused on a disciple of Jesus, but not one of the 12, right? And so it felt like it was the least like The Chosen, but to me, once again, it was almost like a breath of fresh air or something different. And so I just enjoyed that. Like, I always like the episodes that are like different, right? I liked, like last season, I really liked the episode where it's Jesus in Nazareth, right? That was my favorite episode the whole season. And that's the least Chosen like episode, because it's literally focused on Jesus, whereas The Chosen is supposed to be focused on the disciples, right? But I do like whenever it kind of like just like, it almost feels like a little kind of one-off, like a separate thing, to where the disciples do show up in episode 1, but it just felt different, and I really enjoyed that. Okay, so there are my 4 pros. There are her 2 pros. How many cons do you have?
2.
You have 2 cons. I have 4 cons. Once again. So basically, I didn't actually do it for this reason, but let's just say that I did 4 pros and 4 cons because it's season 4. That makes it sound like,
to say so you could one up me.
Oh no. Well, technically I 2 up you.
You too, yeah.
Yeah, so I just did twice as much as you. So
yeah,
that's just kind of how it rolls here. No. So she's got 2 cons, I've got 4 cons. Once again, we will do ladies first. What is your first con in regards to these? Also, real quick, let me just give a heads up. Yes, we're going to share cons. Don't attack us in the comments.
Yeah.
Be
We
gentle
don't
with
hate
us.
The Chosen.
Yes, we like, if we hated The Chosen, we would not be doing this live stream.
Everything
right?
has pros and cons.
Exactly. Everything has pros and cons except for the Bible.
Well, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess given our sinful human natures, we can find cons in the Bible, but that's on us,
but that
not
doesn't
on
make
God.
them true. Yeah.
Yes. So yes, we're going to share cons, but that's because The Chosen is a work of art. It is fallible. There are places where you can critique it. You might not agree with those cons, but I just wanted to clarify, let's have a civil discourse. All right. Just because I've seen some Chosen fans not take kindly to cons.
Yeah.
We'll be fine. All right. What's your first con?
Okay, my first con that I listed was the chronology. So we see things happen with John the Baptist that should not necessarily happen before previous events that we've seen in past seasons.
Oh no, my
And
chronology's
so
rubbing off on you.
I guess I won't say anything specific because that'd be kind of a spoiler. But there's stuff that happens regarding John the Baptist that should have technically already happened if you're looking at chronology that you've seen like in the Bible. And so I just put that as a con. I think, which we'll talk about it whenever we get there, I still think that they did really good with it though. Like I think that it worked and it was good. So it's not necessarily like a terrible con, but it's partly a con because just the chronology is off. So I figured that could be one that I listed.
Yeah.
But I think that they did a good job with those scenes that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So.
And as somebody who is like a stickler when it comes to chronology, and keep in mind, when it comes to the Gospels, it's very difficult to have a firm chronological like timeline because the Gospels aren't clearly chronological. But the thing she's talking about in regards to the John the Baptist, the scriptures are pretty clear on the timeline there.
Mm.
And I was frustrated by it in season 3, but I kind of speculated as to why I thought they saved this event for later.
Mm.
And once I watched it,
it
made sense. Like I get why they did it.
Yeah.
But the Bible purist in me was frustrated by the flip-flop of the events because I think flip-flopping the events changes the whole message and meaning of the event that happened in season 3, right? But I do agree. Like I can get where you're coming from there.
Yeah.
From a chronological perspective, it is kind of frustrating a little bit. All right.
Yeah.
My first con is that some of the acting and the dialogue felt a little bit off to me. Especially like,
well, there's one specific scene I can think of.
There were some scenes like there were some places where the acting just felt like they needed to quote scripture. And
I'd agree.
And I think what was happening was that they were like, okay, the scripture we're wanting to reference is a long passage, but we don't want this scene to drag on for like 10 minutes in order because that's normally what they do, right? Like normally what they'll do is they'll take a scripture, but they want it to like soak in, and so they'll like explain it, and they'll it's almost like turns into a commentary, right? So they'll take like 2 verses and they'll expand on it in order to make it fit more naturally, right? And that's what I've seen in the past, right? Whereas in these episodes, there were a few times where it was like, okay, they've got some big chunks of scripture that they're wanting to cover, but they don't want it to last that long.
Yeah.
And so they're just having the characters like quote it directly.
Yeah.
And it felt very wooden, right? It felt like somebody who had memorized a memory verse and was just like quoting it. It didn't feel like natural dialogue.
Yeah.
Right? Because it would have been fitting if everybody spoke in ESV language to one another or NIV, if everybody in the Chosen spoke in the same dialect and like manner of the English Standard Version, it would make sense. But they talk more naturally and like casually in the show. And so there were times where like the dialogue just felt kind of like choppy. And there were also some times where there was like actors where like, once again, like I feel weird complaining about this because the Chosen's like bar is like so much higher than like any other Christian content I've ever seen. And so even the worst acting in the show is better than any other show I've seen from a Christian perspective. And so I feel bad criticizing that, but I just think it's still fair to do it because since they've set the bar so high, I just want to acknowledge it. There were some characters that showed up and you could tell like the actor, like they were just like one scene and they were probably really excited about it, but they might not have been the most polished actor. And you could tell that they were just reading out, like reciting lines that they memorized. And it didn't feel as natural. Right. And so that was just something I noticed. It's not really a big deal. I think the reason it stuck out to me is because like one of them, it was like an early scene in the first episode to where eventually episode 1 really won me over, right? But it was like one of the early scenes. I was like, oh my gosh, like,
I know,
was there a dip in the acting here? And I was like, is this going to be the whole thing? But then like it very quickly got better. And so that was one con that I had there. Real quick, let me see what some people are saying here. I know we're supposed to focus more on the disciples, but I like it better when we see more Jesus. I would agree. I'm trying my best to just watch the show for what they're trying to make it be. But I think we all bring our own biases to the show. And there are things like whenever we're watching this, we're thinking, oh, wow, what would it be like if I had made this show? Right.
Yeah.
And we have to realize that this is like Dallas Jenkins' child. He can do with it what he wants, but we all naturally want certain things to see. I'm going to see it on Monday. Do I need a full box of Kleenex?
Stuffed in my ideal
Yeah.
chosen.
There were a lot of people crying. Neither her nor I did.
Yeah.
And I'm somebody who I can cry pretty easily in shows. I didn't cry. There's one part in episode 3 where a lot of people cried, but I think I was left frustrated by it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so I did not cry, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. I know we're supposed to focus more on the chosen ones, but I do enjoy when we see more Jesus. Okay. I agree with that. Some of the scripture scenes felt rushed and forced. Yeah. I didn't find your channel until recently and ended up spending the last few months binge watching your chosen content. Of all the chosen channel, thank you. I appreciate that. That is a great
So
compliment.
kind.
Thank you. Yeah, she wasn't the best, and we're talking about the same lady. Yes,
Oh.
I think. I feel really bad because I think
She-
me and you,
okay.
I think me and you were thinking of the same lady, and I can
Yeah.
almost guarantee you're thinking of the same lady as well.
Yeah.
And now I feel really bad because.
But I
yeah.
will say that even though maybe it felt kind of forced, I felt the passion behind what she was
I
saying.
did
like
too.
I felt like I was watching like just the sweetest grandma that like everybody wants to have.
Yes.
I felt like I was watching.
Yeah, we are thinking of
her
the same
on the
lady.
screen. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And to be fair, since she was an older woman, like I think it was still believable because I do know older people who do talk like
No,
that, and
yeah,
so
yeah.
it worked out.
Just in the context of the show.
It was just like, yeah, in the
it's-
context of the show, it felt kind of out of place.
Yeah,
Yes.
she's so sweet though. I wanted to like be her friend.
Yes,
Whenever she came
yeah.
on screen, I was like, oh, she's so adorable.
Yeah. Okay, so second non-spoiler con. What was it?
Mine, well, I wasn't originally going to say this, but then David said that it'd be okay if I said it.
Oh,
and
yes.
I was going to say that the length of it was a con, which is not really that big of a deal because there's probably circumstances as to why. I feel like it would have been better to have maybe just like 2 episodes air at once, just because 3 like felt just like a lot of information coming to you at once. But ultimately, it was fine watching all 3
Yeah.
of them. But I did feel like that was a lot, like it was a big chunk. But it could just be like that I don't really care to sit in a movie theater for that long. Like
Yeah.
I would rather be able to like watch an episode, do something, watch another episode, do something, or like just watch 2 episodes because I feel like it'd be easier even for my brain to like grasp around just like 2. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's not really that big of a con. It's more just like a personal thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And her and I talked about this a lot, and I've already kind of alluded to it earlier, just in this chat. But I think that like I agree with what Brienne's saying. I think it would have been better in like 2 episode chunks or something like that. But I can almost guarantee you that this was something that they had to do. I haven't
Yeah.
read anything about this, and I'm not even sure if the creators of The Chosen would like say this outright. But I imagine, like from a marketing perspective,
Yeah.
I don't think that in any way is it smart for them. Like, is it ideal for them to be releasing 3 episodes, 2 episodes, right? Because the thing is, really, like them putting it in theaters, really one of the goals is to get news out there and to hopefully draw new people in. And people are not usually going to go into a theater to watch something that's labeled as like 3 hours and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think from a marketing perspective, it's not ideal. But so to me, I think that what's probably happening is that, like I mentioned earlier, this is something about the arrangement they have with theaters, because every time you air something in theaters, the theaters are giving up screens that they could use for something else. And so what I imagine went down is that they said, okay, February is a slow month for movies. And so we will give you 1 screen in certain theaters for you to air your Jesus show, right? And so you can air it, 3 episodes 1 week, 3 episodes another week, 3 episodes the last week of February, and then that's it. I feel like if they had it their way, ideally, they would have done 2 episode chunks. Because the thing is, if they did 2 episode chunks, then they could have more airings each day, which would be more profit. The airings would have been at better times, to where more people would be able to go. And so I think that in general, that's what the Chosen team probably would have preferred. And I haven't talked to them about this.
Yeah.
But to me, that's what I would think, just from a marketing perspective.
Yeah.
It makes the most sense, right? So I think that's what they would have preferred. But I imagine that it was just about the deal they had with the theaters. The theaters like, no, we're not going to give a Jesus show like 2 or 3 months worth of time. We will give you 1 month and then like maybe a week into March or something like that, right? I imagine that's probably why it happened. But it is far from ideal. And especially like as somebody who like is taking notes and like trying to process all this, 3 episodes is a lot, right? I mean, we went in there having not seen any of The Chosen season 4, and we came out having seen almost half of it.
I guess,
and it feels like a lot.
I guess, for people maybe that are just going to like watch it for fun, it might be a little bit easier maybe to approach watching 3 of them. But I guess like me, I can at least speak for me, but I could, I guess, say us because we're both filming the video. But whenever like we're going in to watch it, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure like I'm really paying attention to everything because we're going to talk about it to y'all.
Yeah.
And so like I'm having to grasp onto a lot more things because I know that from what I watched, I need to be able to like have a discussion based off of that. And so it feels like a lot more content coming at
Yeah.
me, maybe than someone that's just like going to it for fun, just to go and watch, you know,
Yeah.
and knowing that you can't go and rewatch it right now because it's in the theaters. Like
Yeah.
I'm having to like remember it all in my brain. That
Yeah.
might be another reason. Just going into it, I'm going a little bit different perspective than maybe
Yeah.
other people that are going to watch it. So that might be also
Yeah.
why.
Well, and like for me, I'm having to prepare all these other videos, and normally I have all the videos like before me, and I can just like rewatch them. So like
Yeah.
make like, is it biblical, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I don't have time to like dedicate to like doing this for like my entire year because I've got a job and I've got all this other stuff.
Yeah.
So like that's why I was taking notes in the theater so that like I can be working on that stuff now. Because to me, I was like, okay, February is going to be crunch time, and so I'm going to make a bunch of Chosen stuff. And so it was a little bit overwhelming. Let's see what we got. Some notes here. I bet I know the older lady you're referring to. Yeah, you probably do. Hey, David and Brianne, I'm late to the chat, but I'm excited to hear your thoughts on the first episode of season 4. I'll rewatch later. Blessings to you and your families. Thank you so much. Wonder if we are going to be getting the remaining seasons of the show in theaters. I'm sure that probably depends on how profitable it is for theaters.
Yeah.
Because really, it the better it does, the more successful it is for both the Chosen and theaters.
Yeah.
If it doesn't turn a profit for theaters won't do it, right? And if it doesn't turn a profit for the Chosen won't do it, right? The Chosen will do whatever allows them to make 7 seasons as best as possible.
Yeah. And
I see a lot of people complaining about them going to theaters. Get over it, right? I mean, it's going to be free eventually. Learn to be patient.
Yeah.
Like you have to wait a month, right? We've had to wait 2,000 years for the return of Christ, and so I think you can wait a month for this. I think it's a good thing that they're putting it in theaters because it's kind of spreading some news. Okay, so you've shared your 2 cons,
Yeah.
and now I've got 3 more cons, right? I've got second, third, and fourth.
Yeah.
My second con, and we're gonna get into this a lot when we're talking spoilers for episode 3. I have conflicted feelings about the ending of episode 3. Right, that is my con.
Yeah.
I can't tell you in detail what that is, because this is the non-spoiler section. But for now, what I will say is this: first off, I saw it coming, right? Which a lot of people have said, like I've seen what they've said, and they said they did not see it coming. I definitely saw this coming from a mile away. But my issues with it aren't the issues most people will have with it. I don't think. I think my issues are different than that. I can already kind of predict the issues people will have. Those are not my issues. To me, it almost seems like they're trying to be controversial for controversy's sake, which usually I've been very quick to defend the Chosen when it comes to controversy. But the one thing that they choose to do at the end of this, it almost seems like it's shock value for the sake of shock value. And I don't know. And later episodes might change that, right? Context always helps. And so once I see the rest of season 4, it might merit what's happening here. And I think I see where they're kind of heading with it. But I'm not a huge fan of what they did at the very end of season 3, like episode 3. It just seemed like shock value that kind of took away from the main focus of the show. Con number 3 is that episode 3 in general felt like they were trying to cram in a bunch of Bible stories, right? And what ended up happening is that it seems like they're facing the problem that I've been predicting all along, is that since they've been focusing so much on fictional plot points, they're getting to they're wanting to do like Passion Week in like season 5 and then like Crucifixion season 6. So season 4 basically has to span us the rest of the gospel stories till the last week. And they have not covered that many. Like if you actually look at the stories we have in the gospels, they've only covered a few of them here and there. And so to me, it seems like they're like, oh, crud, we've got 8 episodes and we've got to cram a lot of stuff in there. And that was really evident in episode 3. Because in episode 3, what they did is they took like 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 different Bible passages and kind of just like blended them all together into one narrative, to where if you haven't studied the gospels like super in depth, you might not even notice that they're doing it, because like you'll just like, it'll all just feel familiar. You're like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that story. I kind of remember that story. But as somebody who like has gone deep into the gospels and like who like my primary focus is on the gospels, like whenever I just study the Bible, like it was like, oh, like they wove them together in a really good way, but the way that they had to do it in order to cram it all in into such a short time, it almost took away from each of the individual stories and lessened the impact of them. And so to me, that was a big con, just from like, once again, a biblical purist perspective. Like I was watching it, I was like, oh, like I remember back in like season 1, they would adapt like stories to the screen. And I was like, this is the best adaptation of this story I could imagine. Right. And in season 2, I saw some of the same stuff. But right here, I was like, man, like there's elements of greatness, but it doesn't feel as dramatic as it even feels in the Gospels, which is weird because the Gospels themselves are very understated in their drama, right? Usually the Gospels are like, here's what happened, but it actually felt like it just felt rushed. I think that was the issue. So episode 3 in general for me felt kind of flat because they were just like cramming so much in, especially towards the end, and then the ending of it really just kind of distracted from all of that. Like, so like it kind of like, okay, so you had all these gospel things, you're like trying to wrap your mind around that, and then they have this totally fictional thing that happens that kind of just distracts from it all. To where I remember whenever we were leaving the theater, we weren't even talking about the biblical stuff. We were talking about the entirely fictional thing that happened at the end that distracted from all the actual biblical content. And I think so that was another big con to me. So 2 of those cons are just about episode 3. And then my fourth and last con is that Atticus, he has like a huge character shift. I don't know if you noticed this. Atticus, like he just has a huge character shift in these episodes to where he feels less nuanced. And I think that from a writer's perspective, they're going to argue that, like, I mean, Quintus even acknowledges it in the, like, one of the episodes. He says like, hey, you must have seen something weird. Right. And to be fair, at the end of season 3, he seems to have seen Jesus walking on water or something like that. And so you could say that he's like shaken up. But to me, Atticus felt like a totally different character because in seasons 2 and 3, he was very like nuanced and you never really knew where he stood. Whereas now in these seasons, like I feel like that nuance is gone to where he just like shows up and he's just like being very clear in like what he wants and what he's there for. And if it was like a big reveal, I'd be like, oh, okay, that they're choosing to reveal it. But they don't acknowledge the fact that he's like being more overt. Like you have a character being like, whoa, you seem shaken up. But like nobody's acknowledging like that his subtlety is gone. And to me, I think that was just like I don't know if it's a dip in writing or if maybe I'm just not understanding what they're doing with the character. I've never really known what they're doing.
I was about to say, I've never really known what they were doing with Atticus, honestly.
Like, because they might be leading him to like, I know people speculate that he's going to be like at the cross or something like that. I don't know. I've never known what they're doing with Atticus. He has just been like this character. Like I've always understood like Quintus, he's just like supposed to be the embodiment of like Rome in the Capernaum area, right? Like he's just like, he's showing that. I've never known what they're doing with Atticus.
It's like a middle
and these episodes really just confused me even more because it seems like he just totally changed. And so, yeah, there was my fourth con.
Good.
Real quick, I'm going to go through y'all's comments real quick, and then we can do our rankings, and then we need to get to the spoiler talk.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. Let's look real quick. I wonder if we are going to be getting the remaining seasons. Oh, we already talked about that. Shock value at the end. Yeah, I think that was my frustration. I think they did shock value for the sake of shock value, which I don't like. I love shocking moments, but I don't like it when it just feels tacked on, like whenever it feels like it's purely supposed to shock the audience, and it felt like that. And even whenever they were talking about it ahead of time, it felt like that's what they were trying to do. Like in Dallas's thing before the episodes even aired, he said, whoa, get ready for the end of episode 3. It's shocking. And to me, I was like, I don't know, like whenever the emphasis is on the shock, like, I don't know, the story needs to merit it. And I don't know, we'll talk about that when we get to spoilers. Didn't think it was well done. I did not think it was well done either in particular, and we'll talk about that. Season 1 feels a whole lot spread out in terms of the story, and it's because Dallas was making it. He didn't know they'd get another season. I agree. Season 1 to me felt like it had a clear vision, whereas now, like ever since season 2, and I talked about this, I think in my ranking video, like season 1 seems like it could almost stand alone as its own show.
It's most grounded,
right? Yeah. Whereas once it got picked up for season 2 and onwards, it felt like it was like, oh, now we need to tell the Jesus story and we need to get him to the cross. And so like, rather than it being a clear vision that's like a unified story, it's almost like, okay, these are just stepping stones to like a greater story, which is difficult because, I mean, they're telling the story of Jesus, which is told more episodic in the gospel. So I don't like envy what they're doing, but yeah. Atticus' shift was jarring. Atticus' character was my favorite in these 3 episodes. I felt like things were getting intense. To me, Atticus is a creep, probably. Yeah, love Atticus, despise Quintus. I like Atticus. I think the mystery he portrays is intriguing. Hey, y'all. Hello. I don't feel like they were trying to be controversial at the end. I think it was genuine, and it will connect at the end of the season. I think it will connect. I think like the stuff that we're seeing at the end of this episode will connect to how Tom, or sorry, I don't want to spoil things. Well, I already said Tom. Things involving Thomas, right? Without too much of a spoiler. It will affect things, I think, with how he reacts to things later on in this season, right? If I said exactly what, I think it makes sense. Like, I think I know where they're heading with it. I just still don't think I like it necessarily. And so we'll talk about that. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
I agree about Atticus and Judas also. hit that like button. Yes, please do. Thank you. I appreciate
Look at
that.
that.
I'm always terrible at asking people to hit the like button, but
Someone
that is
did it for you.
yes. Thank you for doing that. Okay, real quick. So this is our last non-spoiler section comments.
Yeah.
Let's rank these episodes.
Okay.
Right. I'll let you give me your order, and then I'll give you my order, and then we'll just move on. Right.
Okay.
What is your order for? How would you rank these episodes from worst to best?
I think I would do 3, 2, 1. Honestly.
3, 2, 1.
Yeah, because first is my favorite, and I liked the second. Like the second episode is close to the first one for me, but to me, the third episode feels really far apart from the first and second. Like if you're thinking about how to rank them, like first and second, they're kind of close for me. Like I like them both a lot, but then the third one feels a little more spaced apart from the first two.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Her and I just think a lot alike. You ready for this? My least favorite was episode 3, and I said episode 3 was one of the weakest of the series, which
of all the
of the
choices?
whole show. And I'll explain why in the spoiler section. And I don't think everybody it's well made, but I think the cons that I have in regards to it make it really weak to me. So episode 3 I think is like one of the weakest, but then episode 2 I said is really good, and then episode 1 is really, really good, right? And so I'm kind of with you to where episode 1 is my favorite of these. Episode 2 is just like right behind it. I think the one thing episode 2 has against it is that it felt really long. I don't know how long it was. I didn't time it, but something about episode 2, like
it
there was
long.
one part where it felt like it was coming to a conclusion, and then it shifted to a whole nother plot point, and I was like, oh, we're not even close to a conclusion. And then like it just something like episode 1 felt like it went by really quick. Episode 2 was like, ooh, I was feeling the length there. And so episode 1 and episode 2 are really close to me, and then episode 3 is really far. So there you go. Like we think a lot.
We didn't talk about that one either.
Yeah. Cool. So I think if Dallas is going into season 1, had known he would have 7 seasons, absolutely for sure, he would have planned it differently. Maybe so. I would hope not, though, because I think season 1 is almost like a perfect season from my perspective. I think I would change a few things of episode 8, maybe. If you change a few things of episode 8, I think that literally that season in and of itself could just be like a perfect standalone Jesus show, right? Just by itself.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not playing here and I don't drive, so it's a blessing. Oh, yeah. All right. What were your favorite and least favorite scenes? We will. I really can't even answer that. That would be a spoiler section question, anyways. I don't even know what that answer would be though. I had plans to watch season 4 today for the matinee, but had to reschedule. I will see it next week for sure. I can wait. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, so right there, just an FYI, I'm going to say this as loud as I possibly can. That is the end of our non-spoiler section, right? So going forward, what we're going to do, and watch this, I'm about to shift the banner. We are now going into spoiler territory. See that right down there?
Spoilers,
boom.
Spoilers.
Spoiler territory. Spoilers. So if you have not seen the show thus far, please get out of here and come back after you've seen it, right? Or if you just don't care about spoilers, hang on in here. But just go in.
No.
Be cautious, right? And so let's start talking about spoilers. And look at this. I've got all these different note things. We're going to go to The Chosen season 4, episode 1. And basically how this is going to go. Wait, real quick. I forgot. I've got to put my little watch this. I have these little slides. Oh, spoilers for episode 1. Spoilers ahead. Boom, boom, boom. All right, there we go. So how this is going to go down is basically we're not going to go plot point by plot point because that would take way too long, and we're going to have other videos on this channel where I go plot point by plot point through these episodes. Instead, what we're going to do is I have just put stars next to different things that I want to talk about, and we're just going to go off each other there and do that. Just because for the sake of time, I mean, whenever we've done plot point by plot point, a single episode will take us 2 hours. Yeah. And we don't feel like being here for 6 hours.
Yeah. So, I don't think y'all do either. So.
Yeah, I mean, we would love to talk with y'all, but we've got other stuff we want to do as well. And so, real quick, let me see. There's a spoiler adjacent question, and we can answer this, then we'll hop in. Are there any crucifixion or cross scenes, even in the background of a scene in the first 3 episodes? No, there are not. No, there's nothing crucifixion related in these. And even the stuff that is more violent is very PG-ified, I would argue. So, yeah. Okay, so going into season 4, episode 1, spoiler ahead. Once again, spoilers. Dallas said to be very clear about spoilers, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I actually want to begin with the opening scene.
Yeah.
Right? Because we open up and we are actually in 4 BC, and we get to see the Virgin Mary right? Mother Mary, and she is going to visit her cousin Elizabeth.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think about that entire scene?
Well, I was wondering how. I thought it was an interesting way to start the season because I was wondering why they were kind of like going back in time and how that was going to tie into, I guess, like what was going to be happening like in the season, why they were going all the way back to before Jesus was born. But I think it ended up tying together by the time you get to the end of the episode.
Yeah.
I thought it was really good. And that's the scene where we get the sweet old lady.
Yes. So yes, the sweet old lady is the person we're talking about when it comes to the acting.
Yeah.
She seems so adorable and sweet, but the acting felt like I was watching like a play at like at a church.
Like a Hallmark movie almost.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. But it was the lady that played it like Elizabeth.
Elizabeth, yes. Yeah. So here's one thing, like as soon as I saw where the flashback was, I knew where they were heading with it. Because I had a feeling that John the Baptist was going to die in episode 1. However, I was so here's where my theorizing like just it messed with me because I was hoping there was going to be a flashback at the beginning of this.
Oh yeah, I meant to mention that.
I was hoping that it was going to be a flashback to the baptism of Jesus. That's what I was hoping. So I was hoping that the first, like the opening thing, like the cold open, I was hoping the cold open for that episode was going to be the baptism of Jesus because Dallas had said he wasn't going to do it. I was hoping we would see it because to me, if I was thinking the death of John the Baptist, I was like, oh, I really like this would be the perfect time to do a flashback. But now that John's dead, we're just never going to see it. And I was like, oh, like that drove me nuts because like if you think about it, like we have John the Baptist, but we never actually got to see him baptizing in the whole show. Which is insane because he's called the baptizer, but I mean, we haven't seen anybody get baptized, which is also strange because the Bible talks about Jesus' disciples baptizing people, but we haven't seen anybody get baptized in the whole show, which is just odd to me.
Yeah.
And so to me, if there was a point to do it, it was going to be there. And I was like, ah, man. But as soon as I saw that like Mary was going here, I was like, okay, they're going to tie this to, his birth to his death, which is cool. I will say it was a bit unsettling to see such an old woman pregnant. Like, I'd read the story a million times in the Bible, but I guess I just never pictured
her that old.
Well, yeah, like it's unsettling, right? It is genuinely unsettling. I mean, I pictured her as old. I just never pictured how unsettling it would be to physically see it. And just watching, I was like, whoa, like it kind of threw you off a little bit.
Catches you off guard, yeah.
And it's interesting because you think there's so many stories in the Bible like that, right? I mean, like Sarai, or like it was Sarah in Genesis. Like that's just very interesting.
Oh yeah, that too. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just thought that was a very interesting scene. I liked how they did it. I think the woman's performance was very sweet and adorable, but that was the one where it felt a little bit choppy.
It did.
But once again, I don't know if it was the woman's fault. That was one of the parts where I was talking about where it was like they were cramming in so much to where it wasn't just her acting that felt off. Even the girl who was playing Mary, it felt off because it was like they were just like it was almost like they were just reciting like Luke chapter 2 to one another. They're like, oh, this is what my messenger said. This is what my messenger said. And she even like justified it at one point because she said like, oh, Zechariah had to write all this stuff down. So I've memorized it. And that was the way I don't know if you caught that. That's why they justified her literally just quoting it verbatim because she wasn't summarizing his words. She was like, well, he couldn't speak. He wrote it down and I've memorized those words.
Yeah.
And so that's how they justified her literally just like quoting it verbatim.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
Which makes sense. But to me, it felt very like off a little bit.
Yeah.
Just comments here. Elizabeth, I absolutely loved how old they made her compared to other shows and movies. It really shows how much of a miracle it was. Yeah, absolutely. That's a very chosen-ass thing to do, like they did with Moses and King David, for sure. No baptism. That is sad. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird to me that they're not like because baptism was such a huge part of Jesus' ministry and stuff. It's weird because like I mean, like to me, it's gonna be weird if they show the Great Commission, right? Because I mean, if the whole show is called The Chosen, it's got to include the Great Commission at some point. But part of the Great Commission is go out and baptize in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It seems weird to me that you're going to like include, like, I don't know, they might not include the Great Commission, but to me, it seems like it would be essential.
Yeah,
but like,
you would think, yeah.
It literally says baptism in there. Like, you got to show baptism at some point. And I don't know, like, that's just a very interesting thing to me. I was really hoping, yeah. And this person says, can't baptize because there are so many denominations who hold to different methods of baptism. I get that, but they don't care about controversy. I mean,
yeah. Oh, that's it.
Yeah, I mean,
end of season.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that they do try their best to be as correct as possible. Like they never explicitly reference whether or not Jesus, like what, like, you know, he talks about his family members, but they don't call them brothers. Yes, I get that, but I don't know. I mean, because I don't think anybody disagrees that John immersed people. Like people disagree that immersion is necessary, right? Like because
Yeah.
the word baptism in Greek literally means to immerse,
Yeah.
right? So whenever we read about baptism in like John the Baptist, I don't think anybody disagrees that he was immersing people because that's what the
Right.
word literally means. I think people more disagree about the modern practice and what needs to happen there.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think they could avoid that, but okay. I just wanted to address that right off the bat because I thought that was a really cool scene. But for the sake of time, let's move on. Let's talk about Salome, right? And not Salome, the mother of James and John. Salome, the daughter of Herodias,
Yeah.
the dancer who Brienne knows more about because Brienne herself is a dancer. So talk to us about Salome.
Yes, I am a dancer, so I do know a lot of different famous dancers. And so whenever it was on screen, I was looking at her and I was like, I know her face from somewhere, but I can't figure it out. And so I was sitting there for a while and then I was like, I remember who it was. Her name is Briar Nolet. And I know a lot of y'all are probably not interested in dance as much as I am, but if you ever want to see someone who's like super athletic and want to go and watch videos, just look her up on like YouTube. She was on World of Dance, which is like a dance like TV show, and she was on there for she got really close to the end. I don't think she won it, but she got really close to the end. And she's also just a famous dancer in the dance world, so you can go and watch her competition dance and stuff. But very athletic, very good. I've always liked watching her dance since I was young, and actually a dance I choreographed was inspired by one of the dances that she did. So
yeah, that was so cool to me, like watching it, because like I was watching it and we got all the way, I think, into her actual performance, and you hadn't told me that you knew who this person was.
I didn't tell you to the end.
Well, yeah, and I was like watching the performance. I was like, this girl is a good dancer. Like I don't know if this actress has to be professional because like I was like, it was so much more impressive than I expected. And I was watching it, and I'm not into dance that much, right? I was just watching. I was like, wow, I was genuinely impressed. I felt like Herod Antipas. I was like, all right, yeah, good job. And then she leans over. She's like, I know who that dancer is. And she told me, I was like, that's so cool. Like, I don't know. There's just a fun trivia thing that I would have never expected. Like, I think that's just so cool that they hired like a very well-known dancer, and she did a great job. Yeah, like
she's really
she
good.
didn't have like a big part because I'm guessing she's not really much of an actor.
No, she's
right. She was probably hired for the dancing because I think she only had one line, and I don't even know if she said it right.
Well,
she whispered it. Like I don't know if did we ever even hear her voice like spoken. I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Because I think it was mainly just her like responding and like doing things. But yeah, and so so I thought that was really cool, and I thought she did a great job. And I will say her dancing scene, like the actual performance. That is the scene that I'm talking about where I was genuinely just like awestruck by just the whole banquet scene. Like it even began with like the camera like zooming from crowd to crowd. And like you see that in like movies and stuff like that in theater, like all the time. It felt like Fast and the Furious or something like that, where it's like, or like a heist movie where it's like kind of zooms in and you like are tracking people.
Yeah.
And then just like how big that scene felt.
Yeah.
That was the scene where I was like, this needs to be seen in theaters. Right.
Yeah.
Just like that whole thing. I was like, wow.
Very cinematic.
Like, back whenever I was watching season 1, I would have never thought we got here.
Yeah.
Right. Because that scene right there, I was like, this feels big. Like that, just that banquet scene to me earned the movie ticket because all the other stuff I think was about normal, what you would have expected in seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Right. But that scene, I was like, whoa, like
felt
this
extravagant.
Yeah. Like this felt like it needed to be in a movie. And I thought that was just like really, really cool.
Yeah.
And so I did really like that.
Yeah. Really good scene.
All right. Next thing I want to talk about, Simon Z and Judas. Right, their whole like conversation while Simon Z was teaching him how to like wash clothes.
Yeah.
What did you think about just that interaction?
I thought that I see what they were trying to do with the scene. It took me a little while of trying to like really listen to their dialogue to figure out what's going on, but I see how they're trying to slowly but surely through Judas's interactions with different people, they're building his character and kind of, I guess, revealing like his values of what he likes to eventually lead to him betraying Jesus. So you see how in this conversation, he's very much motivated by like money, and his mind is much more business-like than what, who's it, Simon Z? Yeah, than Simon Z's is. And so I thought it was just kind of a cool interaction, just getting to see the two sides of like Simon Z being more, I guess, worried about like the heart of what Jesus is wanting, and Judas being more worried about like the appearance of things that are happening by following Jesus, or I guess, almost trying to like impress him and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And it also hints back to both of them of what they used to do in their old
Yeah.
self and becoming new with Jesus and stuff. So I thought that it was a good scene, them
Yeah.
being able to kind of flesh out Jesus' character a little bit more because he hasn't been there as long as the rest of the disciples.
Yeah.
So I thought that that was good.
Yeah. I thought
Yes.
Simon Z had matured so much. Like
Oh,
just
I agree with
in his
that. Oh, yeah.
conversations, I was like, wow, like this
He
guy,
has grown a lot.
yeah, just even since the last season. Like you could tell this dude's been doing a lot of reflecting. And
Yeah.
it felt more natural to me. Like some of the characters, they just shifted. Like Atticus, I said, he shifted so much. Whereas Simon Z, this genuinely felt like a guy who had just like I could see this like believable growth over a short amount of time period where
Mhm.
he just understands things are not going to be as I expected.
Yeah.
And he's like he understands this more than anybody else because I mean he was expecting to like go overthrow Rome. And now he's like, no, we got to submit to Jesus.
Mhm.
Right. And so there's nobody better to be communicating this to Judas. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Oh, I was also gonna say that I liked how the scene was them doing something just like really mundane.
Mhm.
Like sometimes I feel like this is an easy temptation, I think, in like any type of filmmaking, whether it's biblical related or not. Sometimes whenever you're trying to like get a point across or you're trying to like lay seeds and stuff like that with throughout the story, it's easy for directors, I guess, sometimes to make it too like overt where they have to like sit down in a dark room and like
Yeah.
have a conversation, I don't know, and make it like overly dramatic. But I liked how they were just like on the shoreline, like he was teaching him how to wash clothes.
Yeah.
Like he had never been taught how to wash clothes before, and they're just like walking through the steps of it, and conversation is being like weaved in and out, which again is like realistic. Like
Yeah.
they're two people that have to do things throughout the day. They have to do their chores or whatever they want to call it, and they're having natural conversation with one another.
Yeah.
And you see how, I don't know, how Simon Z is like naturally growing, and how Judas is also naturally growing
Mhm.
as time passes,
Yeah.
versus it being like they need to sit down and have this like brooding conversation. I don't know,
Yeah.
because that's realistic, right? Like they are growing people just like how we are.
Yeah.
So I
Well, it's
like
also
how
funny.
it was a mundane thing.
Well, it's funny because Judas even addresses that.
Yeah.
Because Judas is saying, should we be bothering ourselves with these mundane things?
Mhm.
He's like, we should be out like doing more important stuff.
Yeah.
And Simon's he's like, well, no. Like, it's important for us
We
to
need to
do the things
identify.
like everybody else, right?
Mhm.
Like, you can't just start getting too big for your britches where you think that, ooh, I'm a follower of the Messiah. I don't do that stuff. And he's like, no, we are like everybody else. We have this amazing privilege to follow him.
Yeah.
One thing that I will also say, which I don't like to complain too much, but this is where I start feeling like the show is rushed. And I don't know what their plans are. Like to me, it seems like crazy to devote 3 seasons to like 5, 6, and 7. It seems crazy to me to devote that to like just the passion story. I know that like the Gospels also lean very heavy on that, but like just given like the nature of a 7-season show, it feels like there's so much more room for opportunity to like flesh Judas out even more.
Yeah.
And it feels so rushed already. And once again, this is the most character development we've ever gotten for Judas.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I just want more of a good thing, like because Judas, he feels like he just started following Jesus.
Yes.
And we're already beginning to see the cracks.
Him turning. Yeah.
Which is like, I'm like, it seems like a missed opportunity, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to complain about it. It just seems like a missed opportunity because he's the most recent disciple, right? We didn't even meet him until the end of season 2.
Mhm.
And he was in season 3, but we really didn't get to see like much of him. He was just more like in the background in a lot of it. Like he didn't really have like a clear arc, right? And so he was kind of in the background. And then here we are in season 4,
Mhm.
and we've already seen in the trailers that he's going to be like stealing money from the purse already.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wish that we'd almost like been introduced to him back in season 1.
Yeah.
So that we had more time with him so that it felt even worse. Because I feel like I haven't connected to Judas in a way that's going to make it more heartbreaking when he falls. You know what I mean? Because to me, like we've seen the cracks the whole way.
Yeah.
Whereas to me, if you're like, when it comes to a storytelling, right? Because once again, the Gospels, they just tell you that Judas is the traitor from the beginning, right? I'm just speaking as a storyteller, right? From a storytelling perspective, I think it would be so much more, like it would have been so much more powerful to be like, man, introduce Judas at the beginning and make it so hard to see the cracks and just see them develop over time. And you're like, no, like to where it's heartbreaking. You're like, no, no, no. Whereas with this one, it's like, we saw him as a businessman. We saw him in the background of season 3, and he was already complaining about business stuff. And then now he's complaining about it more. And it seems like, okay, well, he's obviously greedy and he's going to steal money and he's going to betray him, right? Like, it just feels like we haven't had enough time to like I just feel like my heart's not going to break that much when he does betray
Right.
Jesus.
I feel like if The Chosen is wanting to have moments of like shock factor, which we see like from these episodes that they do, like they're willing to like have these like big like shocking moments. I feel like they could do that with Judas, like
Yeah.
with him betraying Jesus, but you have to build up his character a certain way in order for the audience to be like connected to him and for them to like, for like you were saying, like for your heart to break whenever he like betrays. And so I feel like his like moment of betraying Jesus could be one of those big shocking moments, but I feel like as of right
Yeah.
now it won't be as
Well, yeah,
shocking.
because to
Which,
me,
I mean, you already know he's going to, but still, whenever you're like immersed in a story, even if you know what's going to happen, you're still like, if it's good storytelling, you can still like, your heart can still break, even though
Yeah.
you already know what the end is going to be.
yeah, because to me, like if you were to get all the 12 disciples in a room right now, and you were to say
It'd be
one of you is going to betray me,
obvious.
I think everyone would be like, well, it seems like it's probably going to be Judas.
Well, yeah, and whenever
Because
they're at the Last Supper,
yeah,
they're like who? They don't
Yeah.
know who. It's not an obvious thing. They're like, oh yeah, it's Judas. Like
yeah.
they
Whereas
don't know.
thus far in the show, almost every in-depth conversations that people have had with Judas,
Mhm.
he has voiced how he thinks Jesus is doing things wrong, and others have done that too, right? Other disciples have voiced their concern, but they've learned their lesson. Whereas Judas consistently pushes back and doesn't listen. So to me, if
Mhm.
Jesus was going to say one of you's going to betray me, I'd be like, well, it's probably Judas because the Pharisees have been offering a lot of money,
Yeah.
and this dude is influenced by money.
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's almost like the
yeah.
other characters are like ebbing and flowing, you know, like things happen, but then they have like a redemptive arc or whatever.
Yeah.
But kind of with Judas, it's kind of like all going uppers, like kind of like a
Yeah.
plateau type thing, to where he's not having these like redemptive moments to be like, oh no, he's going
Yeah.
back the other way. Like
Yeah. And I do want to acknowledge this comment right here. It's got to be so difficult to write this show, so much in the Bible, so little time.
yeah.
Yeah, like, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it's easy for us as viewers to criticize, and that's why I'm trying not to criticize. I'm just saying, like, if I had been in charge, this is what I would have
Yeah.
tried to do. But you know what? Hindsight, right? I mean, there's probably a lot of things like if they could go back to season 1, they would change as well,
There's always something,
right? And
yeah.
so there's always going to be that. I'm just trying to be honest here. I mean, my channel's called Now Let's Be Honest, right?
Yeah.
And we're just sharing our thoughts,
Making
right? So
conversation.
we're not saying that we could do better. We're just saying this is like, I would have loved to see this.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on. This is just something I can address really briefly. I don't think
Okay.
you're gonna have anything to say about it.
Okay.
But this is whenever basically they're talking like basically Jairus and Rabbi Akiva are
Mhm.
talking with Zebedee and John about like the olive oil stuff.
Oh, okay.
And they just make this comment to Yusuf, right? And they say, "You honestly think I don't know who your father is?"
Mhm.
And that's going to come back in another episode where basically like we get the impression that Yusuf's father is somebody important. And I'm assuming they're going to reveal who that is, but to me that's just interesting because I want to know where they're heading with that, because the running theory is that Yusuf is Joseph of Arimathea, right?
Mhm.
The rich guy who ultimately is going to bury Jesus. And I'm assuming that's where they're heading with this, because they even like later on, spoiler alert for another episode, he says, I'm going to try to get on the Sanhedrin, right? Which is Joseph of Arimathea is a member of the Sanhedrin, right? And so it seems like they're setting it up, but I'm wondering if there's going to be like where they're heading with him, his father, right? I mean, it could just be as simple as his father's significant, and we're just supposed to take, okay, he's got connections, going to end up on the Sanhedrin. So it could be heading nowhere, but they kept drawing attention to it. And I was like, I don't know what they're going to do with that information. Plot twist: Nicodemus is going to say, "I am your father." I'm kidding. That's a joke. That would be so corny, especially because he's interacted with Nicodemus plenty of times.
Someone can make a spoof.
Yeah, that'd be funny. Okay, so there's that. We could talk about Herod's banquet, but I kind of already talked about that, and so for the sake of time, yeah, it was very good. Let's talk about John the Baptist's death.
Yeah.
Right. I really like the editing of how they did John the Baptist's death contrasted by the flashbacks.
I did too.
Right, the back and forth there. It kind of called back to like the finale of season 3, where you had, Peter walking on water and Eden going into the mikvah.
Yes.
Right, to where you have both things like just helping one another out.
Yeah.
And I thought it did a really good job. Yeah. What did you think about all that?
I thought it was really cool, and that's whenever it got to that part. See, I didn't know the beginning where like it was like heading whenever they did the flashback at the very beginning, but then when it was sandwiched at the end, I was like, I see what they're doing there.
Yeah.
And it's also, I felt like the way they did that was deepening the relationship between Jesus and John the Baptist, and so whenever you see Jesus like tear his clothing and he's mourning and stuff, it adds more depth to it, because whenever like I read that in the Gospels, I don't always think back to like oh wow, like they were born around the same time and like they knew each other, they grew up, like they have this relationship. So I thought it was cool how they did that. I thought, which I told you this before we ever went to go see it, I thought that it would have been cool. I don't know how they would have done this because I'm not as good as storytelling as them or David or anyone. But I was thinking that maybe they would do John the Baptist's death as a flashback. So that way
Oh, that would have been nice.
That's what I
Yeah.
told David. I was like, before we went and saw the movie, I was like, what if they do John the Baptist's death as a flashback, and then it would fix all chronology?
Yeah.
Because then it would be like, this happened before, but we didn't show it. But they didn't. But like I said, whenever I was doing my pros and cons, I still think that they did it really well, even though
Yeah.
the chronology was a little different. I think that they did really good.
Yeah. So if you haven't heard our rant before, when we were talking about the chronology thing earlier.
Oh yeah.
So the main thing that frustrates us so much is that they didn't put John the Baptist's death before the feeding of the 5,000.
Yeah.
Right. That was my big prediction last season. And that's because that is one of the clear chronological things in the Gospels, and it affects how you interpret the feeding of the 5,000 so much.
Yes.
Right. Because whenever you read the Gospels, they consistently say John the Baptist died before the feeding of 5,000 because there's two things. Basically, John the Baptist dies and the disciples get back from their 2x2 mission. Right. Those things happen around the same time period. And that's why Jesus is motivated to withdraw, right? He's trying to get away because he's grieving the death of his cousin and the death of his forerunner, and he's thinking about his own future death, right? And his disciples need rest. And so he uses this as basically a reason to go on a little vacation, right? Basically just a retreat to get away and rest, right? And then 5,000 men plus women and children come and follow him, right? That changes the meaning of it because then you get to see like, you can see Jesus' compassion, right? Because like if anybody deserved rest at this time, it'd be Jesus and the disciples.
Yep.
But instead, he uses the feeding of the 5,000 as an opportunity to teach the disciples what it looks like to be the chosen, right? He says, we're going to have compassion on them. And even whenever it's late in the evening, they're saying, let's get them to leave. And you can tell they're tired. And he says, let's feed them, right? And like, so that's why we get so frustrated by that whole like thing, because whenever you see the feeding of the 5,000, in season 3, the meaning's totally different, right? It's literally just like, oh, look, let's just feed the people, right? It's more just like him being extra nice.
Yeah.
But then whenever you read it in the Gospels, and especially when you put all 4 Gospels together, there's just so much richer meaning. And then it makes even more sense when you follow it up by the bread of life discourse in John chapter 6. Because basically Jesus, he walks on the water, and then whenever people wake up and they figure out he's not there, they follow him across and they go find him. And he says, oh, really? You want to follow me? You only follow me because you want more bread.
Yeah.
Right? I'm the bread of life. Eat my flesh, drink my blood. And they totally skipped that story as well. But in that story, Jesus runs everybody off. And then he turns to the disciples and says, what, are you going to leave too? And then Peter says, to whom would we go? You have the words of life. And also, that's just one of my favorite moments in all the Gospels. And so that's why we get so frustrated by the chronology, because it's like, oh, like it just changes the meaning of the feeding of the 5,000 thing to where it fell flatter to me.
Yeah.
But I get why they did it, right?
Yeah.
And I talked about this at the end of season 3. I understood why they didn't want to do John the Baptist's death there, because they would have had to do it basically in season 3, episode 7. And season 2, episode 7 is where Andrew was freaking out about John the Baptist being in prison, right? And so then it would be like this, it would be rinse and repeat. I get why they didn't do it, but to me, it took away from the story. And once again, they can do what they want.
Yeah.
This was just one of those places where it was like, oh, missed opportunity.
Yeah.
But I think they redeemed it in season 4 because they used it as an opportunity to catapult us into a more serious season, right? Because I'm not going to lie. Whenever you have John the Baptist walking in there, laying his head down and like them pulling the rope tight where like you realize he's not going to move again, right? Like he is not moving until his head is off.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to lie. I was starting to cringe there. I was like, ooh. Like,
yeah, I was too.
Like, you know, it's one thing to read about it in the Gospels, but then like seeing it there, you're
out.
like it really does like hit, oh, wow, this is serious.
Yeah.
And then just seeing John turn his head and like look into the light. There was one little joke here that I thought was really funny. I don't know if there was I don't know if this was a reference or not. But basically what happens is that he looks at, you know, this silver plate thing and like the silver platter, and he's like, oh, is that real silver or whatever? And they're like, oh yeah, for the finest of wedding ceremonies or something. I don't remember the exact quote.
Yeah.
And he says, oh, I've never been to a wedding ceremony, but I'm about to head to one. Right. Which is cool. And then the guards are like, what are you laughing at? And then John kind of smiles and laughs and he says, you wouldn't get it. Now, if Dallas Jenkins watches this, I want to hear if this is what this was referenced to. It seemed to me like he was referencing the Joker movie, right? You remember like the
Oh.
Joaquin Phoenix one?
Oh.
Because at the beginning and the end of that movie, there's like this line with the Joker where like he's like in a therapy session and people are talking to him and then he starts like laughing and they're like, "What is it?" And he's like, "You wouldn't get it."
Oh.
And to me, it seemed like, I mean, if you were going
Yeah,
to
I wouldn't have
compare
guessed that.
some character in the Gospels to the Joker,
It
it'd
would
probably be
be
John the
John the
Baptist, right?
Baptist,
Because
yeah.
he's wild and he's crazy. And to me, it seemed like that's what that was a reference to. Or not even a reference, maybe an allusion, or like maybe that was where the inspiration came
Yeah,
from.
yeah.
I don't know. But the reason I even thought of it was because I think I was watching the Grafted YouTube channel, like just their review that they posted last night. And they mentioned that they didn't understand that joke. Whereas to me, I was like as soon as I heard it, I thought, oh, the Joker. But I
Yeah.
don't know. I could be wrong there. I thought that was very funny.
Yeah.
And so let me see. The only other thing I wanted to talk about this is once again, I liked the back and forth between the dedication of John and his
Mhm.
naming and Zechariah speaking again and Zechariah prophesying. I thought that was a good contrast.
Mhm.
And then just one thing I thought was cool is that Matthew is so attentive, right? I don't know if you noticed this, but whenever it cuts to Matthew, like whenever everybody's talking, Matthew is the first one to see Joanna arrive
Yes.
to go visit Andrew.
Yep.
But then Matthew is also the first one to see Jesus arrive.
Mhm.
Like I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Like whenever everybody else is like all like focused on one another, Matthew is still the one observing all around, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know what
I feel like
to
that's
take out of that, but
I feel like that's just like it very much aligns, I guess, with like how his character is. Like
Yeah.
if there's anyone out of all of them that would be really attentive, I feel like it would be Matthew.
yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought that was like a cool thing to where it was both times, right? Like all of them were like gathered here, focused on like congratulating Thomas and Rama over their whole thing. We haven't even talked about Thomas and Rama. We'll save that for episode 3. But they're all congratulating them, and then Matthew's the one who just sits there and just like looks, and he sees Joanna pull up, and then go to Andrew, and then Andrew receives the news, and then he's the one who sees Jesus and says, "Oh, we're not gonna have to go tell Jesus." And then just that final shot of like Jesus and John the Baptist's disciple Abner, right? They're just walking in and they're just like,
Covered in ash.
well, yeah, they're covered in sackcloth and ashes, which is just a classic like Jewish way of mourning.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just thought that was like really powerful. Just I don't know. Like Jesus looked like he'd gotten through like a nuclear holocaust or something like that. Like he was just like,
he's looking rough.
yeah, he was like you've never really seen that, and like the
Yeah.
disciples were like, whoa,
What's happening?
that was just pretty wild. Do you have anything else you want to share about episode 1?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think
cool.
we covered it all.
Let's go through some of these comments real quick, and then we will move on. Cool, world-class dancer. I'm especially wondering how they're going to make season 6 and 7 work with an 8-episode format. Yeah, and then they've even talked about. Did I tell you about this? Where they're wanting to do like full-length movies
Oh no.
for I think season 6 and 7.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I have
Oh,
no,
no, wait, I
yeah,
think you might
I
have
have no
told me
idea
about that.
what they're gonna do there. I would imagine like maybe the crucifixion would be a movie, but I have no idea. That's what I was saying. If Dallas had known he would have enough money to do 7 seasons or maybe even more going into season 1, I think Judas would have been introduced earlier. I think so too, right? I mean, I think they would have changed a lot more if there was a guarantee, but you just never know. It's got to be difficult to write the show. We talked about that earlier. Maybe they'll make Judas do something really sweet and we'll have our hearts broken. Who knows? Yeah, I mean, there's always room for them to like earn it. It's just one of the things like where I don't know. I'm naturally like a storyteller. I love telling stories,
Yeah.
and so whenever I watch this stuff, I'm like, ooh, like I see potential in places, but this is Dallas Jenkins' vision. He can do what he wants. So I don't want it to ever be like me just openly criticizing. We just have different flavors and different preferences. The lamb scene was beautiful. Yeah, that was the one place where I'd say the CGI was kind of wonky.
Yeah.
But
I see what
nothing.
they're going for.
Yeah, well, and it was also almost supposed to be like well, I couldn't tell if he was supposed to be seeing an actual lamb out there or if he was like seeing heaven almost, like to where it's like he's seeing the Lamb of God.
Yeah.
Right? To where like I was wondering if it was supposed to be that, to where it could kind of explain the CGI being like it's almost like a vision, right?
Yeah.
So I could see it being like that. We understand you're expecting honest feedback. Yeah, thank you. It would have been a better as a flashback. Yes, I agree. But it would have been hard. Okay, sorry. This is another thing. Chronology, right? I don't get this. Okay, so at the banquet, right? You've got this like scene where Salome's dancing and stuff like that, and then it cuts to Chuza's table and Joanna's gone, and we see that Joanna is in a carriage like riding to Capernaum, right? Whenever she gets there, she has like a letter in her hand where she's like announcing that John is dead, right? But the thing is, like, I know that she had visited the prison and stuff, and she picked up on the fact that John was probably going to die. But like, this is where you kind of have to turn your mind off and not analyze things too much. But I'm like, do you know how messed up that would have been if like it turned out she was wrong?
Oh no.
Because the thing is,
Announced it and then
well,
she was
yeah,
actually alive.
because the thing is, she left the whole area before Herod had actually agreed to it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to me, it's like you almost have to wait there, stay at the banquet, see what happens, and also then it makes you wonder how they had the story, right? Because like this is just the gospel nerd in me, right? Typically, the reason we would say that we have stories of what happened to John the Baptist with Herod Antipas, like if we're trying to figure out where the gospel authors got their source, is because we read that Herod had a woman named Joanna there who probably reported it to the gospel authors. But if she wasn't there, then how do they know this story? Right. And so that's just like, I was wondering that because I was like, okay, like she got there and she was like, John is dead. And everybody's like this. But like, do you know how awkward it would have been if like a week later, John the Baptist shows up and he's like, oh no, it turns out I was freed. It's like, that would have been so awkward.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was kind of funny. But okay. I'm wondering if they were going to do a Bread of Life discourse. I wish they were going to. That should have happened by now, unless they're really messing with the timeline. Yeah, the time to do it would be immediately after the feeding of 5,000. I did not like the line John said about not getting it. It just didn't fit his character. I feel like he would have told them to repent and called them a brood of vipers. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, John's character is weird enough. Like, he's the one where I can let it slide that I don't understand what he's doing. Because he
eats honey and locusts.
Yeah, he just does whatever he wants. And so it didn't really bother me too much. Okay, so now what we're going to do, we are about to go to episode 2. But real quick, just because I have an opportunity to talk about this. Oh, wait, real quick. Dwayne Smith. Hey, Dwayne, how's it going, man? Dancing was tasteful, but it still communicated the biblical insinuation of being more erotic. Yes, so that's the thing. They did it in a very tasteful manner, but more than likely in the actual story, Salome's dancing was probably a lot more sensual and weird, and it's suggesting a lot of there's a lot of erotic overtones to that whole thing. But they did it in a very tasteful way in this, to where it still felt like Herod was like lusting after her in a strange way. But they did it very tastefully, which I thought was good. Okay, but before we get to episode 2, there is one thing that I just wanted to make known to everybody for y'all watching this, just because recently I just launched a second YouTube channel. This is not related to The Chosen necessarily. It was actually my attempt to help clear up this YouTube channel, because for a while, this YouTube channel, I was posting like 5 or 6 videos a week, just because I would be posting like Bible studies I led throughout the week and stuff like that. And so in an attempt to clean up this YouTube channel and make this one more Chosen focused and like focused on stuff I'm explicitly making for YouTube, I did launch another YouTube channel, which is just called my name, David Tate. And so I did want to remind you about that YouTube channel in case you wanted some longer form content where we're just like leading Bible studies that are very casual stuff, where it's like just at my house leading those Bible studies, or when I'm preaching at my church and stuff like that. And so if you did want to check out that YouTube channel, you can go down to the link in the description down below. And I thought I would show you the little logo thing that I made for this because I thought it came out kind of cool. And so I'm going to show you this, and then we'll get to our episode 2 spoiler discussion. Yeah, so there's that. I just thought I would tell y'all about that because I don't know, it's a thing that it's there, and I'm not creating that channel for it to like get really big. I mean, I don't do this YouTube thing to become really big. I mean, if it grew, cool, but I more just do it because I like putting biblical content out there. But the more people that can, watch the videos, hopefully the more people it'll reach. And so I just figured I would announce that in case you didn't know it existed there, because that channel, I mean, it's only got like 80 subscribers right now. But that's going to be like longer form stuff. And so if you are here for that, go for it. But if you're only wanting the Chosen stuff, this is the channel for you. Don't bother with the other one. Okay, so now it is time for us to go into episode 2. Let me get my little thing here. Ho, ho, ho. Episode 2. Spoilers ahead. Let us talk about episode 2. Like I said, I don't know how long this episode was, but this one did feel a lot longer. But I did like it. Just barely under episode 1. So episode 1 I thought was super duper strong. Episode 2, if there had been like just a few scenes cut out, if it was a little shorter, I would have liked this probably more. Yeah, is there anything, just starting up the top, is there anything you particularly want to talk about first?
I will say the very beginning of the episode, the opening scene felt very long. Like how quiet it was for a really long time. At first, I thought it was a screensaver and we were about to get an intermission.
That is
because
funny. Yeah.
because
yeah.
it was standing there like for a while and there wasn't any noise, and then I was like, okay, maybe they were going for the dramatic effect of it being quiet for a while. And so then I was sitting there and then I was like, I don't think Jesus is moving. Is this a still shot? Because it wasn't zooming in yet.
Yeah.
I was like, is this a screensaver? Is a timer about to come up? I was trying to figure it out. But I guess that there was supposed to be a dramatic impact to that. But yeah, that kind of caught me off guard
Yeah.
a little bit because it was like
It was very long.
silent for a very long time and in the same, and then it started to pan in.
Yeah.
And so once it started panning in, I was like, oh, okay, we're at episode 2. But
Yeah.
I thought that it was kind of cool how they did the scene because there wasn't really dialogue that was going on. It was
Mhm.
all just like an interaction between John the Baptist and him, and like the way that he like motioned for him, like that
Yeah.
he like prepared the way. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah. It was
Yeah. And it felt like almost like, I guess, like closure for Jesus in a way, I guess,
Yeah.
in a way like that he had mourned John passing, and then that was in between whenever he talked to, who did he talk to whenever he was sitting?
Andrew.
Yes, whenever
Yeah.
like he was talking with Andrew, and like that was kind of like the in between scene. So like he mourned himself. He had this like thing where he sees John the Baptist, and then he kind of like comforts Andrew and talks
Yeah.
about how to move on from mourning. I thought it was
Yeah. It was yeah, that first opening shot, I will admit it felt a little too long there because it was like it just, I don't know. I remember there was like a speculation because whenever we watched the trailer for it, I don't know if you even watched the trailers. I don't remember if yeah. But in the speculation videos, I was thinking that there was going to be either some sort of vision of John like in heaven or something like that. Like
Yeah.
that was I think even in my prediction video that I did yesterday, I think I predicted that we were going to get a shot of John in heaven because you see him breaking the chains. And so to me, that had to be John after he was out of prison and stuff like
Mhm.
that. So, dead.
Mhm.
I didn't know if it was going to be a dream sequence or not,
Mhm.
but it was interesting. I mean, I thought it was cool because he breaks the chains, and that kind of seems to allude back to whenever John's disciples ask him, "Are you the one who is to come, or should we look for another?" Jesus responded, and he quoted all these prophecies from like Isaiah, but the passages, like the parts that he leaves out of those prophecies, are like proclaiming liberty to the captives
Mhm.
and freeing those who are bound. So he leaves those parts out, which kind of communicates to John, yes, I am the one who is to come, but no, you're not getting out of prison.
Mhm.
But now here he has gotten out of prison because he's, in heaven.
Yeah.
Right. And then you even have John, like I like that John breaks the chains
Yeah.
and then he like points.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's almost like he's preparing the way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like almost like John is smiling. He's like, I'm free now.
I got you.
Now you can go do what you're gonna do. Right.
I wanted to highlight this comment because I thought the same thing. She said, I thought it was going to be the tempting in the wilderness. I almost broke when John broke the chains. Whenever it was panning in and then it went behind him and he was like looking
Oh,
out.
that would have been sick.
And he was looking out. I said in my head, I was like, are we about to have like the tempting? Like, I literally thought
Dang.
that in my head. So that is so funny that you said that
Yeah.
because that is exactly what I thought.
Somebody else said that too.
And I meant to mention it whenever I first was talking.
Yeah.
But when it was after it panned in and it went behind him and you were looking from his perspective, I thought that it was gonna like pan around and he was gonna be tempted by the devil. That's literally what I thought.
I didn't even think about
But
that.
I was thinking in my head, I was
Yeah.
like, how are they gonna depict the devil? Like, how's this gonna look? Like, I was trying to think of it.
Wow.
But that's literally what I
Huh.
thought. I'm so glad that someone else said that too.
Missed opportunity. That sounds awesome.
Right?
I
But
would
it
love to
was
see
like
that.
the grading. I don't remember if
Yeah.
there. I think it was because maybe the lack of music, because I don't even think there was any music.
Oh, it was just silent.
It was
Yeah.
just silent. I was like, oh, this is intense.
Yeah.
And so I literally thought it went behind him and it was going to pan around. I'm so glad y'all
Yeah.
said that.
I
because
would want to know what their creative choice was for that long pan because I don't know.
I don't
Like
know.
it was an
It's
artistic
dramatic
choice.
impact
It makes me
or
wonder if
something.
it was just because it was like a really scenic shot and they just wanted it to linger. But it lasted
A little
like-
too long. Maybe.
like if the content of the dream had been different, I feel like it would have been earned. But like I remember I was sitting there and I think I might have even looked over at you to where I was like, this is going on a really long time. Like it was a very slow pan
Yeah.
in to where I was like, okay, that was a choice that was
Yeah.
made. But man, 40 days in the wilderness, that would have been awesome.
yeah,
Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the dream was cool, but like,
that's what I thought it was
Yeah,
going to
th-
be.
I mean-
And I was wondering why that was next. I was like, that's an interesting choice.
man, now I'm wishing
Yeah.
that we got that. That would have been awesome.
I know. I'm
Who
so
knows?
glad that y'all jogged my memory.
Maybe we
Thank you
can-
for putting that in the
Maybe
comments.
they can do it eventually. Maybe that'll be one of the movies. It'll just be a
Oh,
2-hour
yeah.
movie, 40 Days in the Wilderness. I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay, so we did that. Moving forward, the next thing I wanted to talk about. Oh, there was this one joke Atticus made to Quintus. I just had to highlight it. There's really not much to say about it. But it's in the scene where Quintus is getting his bust, like the bust carved.
Oh,
And
yeah. Okay.
this is like I wanted to highlight this because this to me was the perfect example of just like genuine humor from one person to another that just like broke the tension, to where Atticus comes in and he says, normally I would tell this man he is immortalizing the wrong end. To where he's basically saying, you know, he doesn't need to be carving your bust of your face. He needs to cover your other end because that's all you are. And like that was like it was such a funny line to where it, like everybody in the audience, you could tell it took them a second to get the joke, to where they're like, oh, and like, and that was one that literally made me laugh out loud.
Yeah.
But it felt natural, right? It wasn't like, because it wasn't directed at the audience like, ha ha ha, see, we're funny. It genuinely felt like this is Atticus and Quintus banter, right? This is just how it was. And so I just thought that joke was really funny, and that was like a perfect example of what I thought. Like the humor was really good in this episode.
Yeah.
Next thing, okay. This is where we can start getting into the more controversial stuff, because I want to talk about Thomas and Rhema.
Okay.
Right. So back in episode 1, Thomas and Rhema, they did meet each other. They had that really cute scene on the dock, which is really nice, where they started doing some premarital hand-holding, which is ooh. But they basically, like, Rhema proposed this idea of like a way for them to get married without her father's approval, right? Well, in this episode, as Jesus and them are beginning to make their way to Caesarea Philippi, basically Thomas and Rhema decide now is the best time to literally just go and ask Jesus about it.
Yeah.
And I thought this was handled really well, right? At first, I was wondering how Jesus was going to handle this because I don't know, like, you got to be careful how you address this. It helps that Kaufney is not a believer, right? Because you do want to, like, I know that nowadays we live in a culture where people think, like, you know, asking
Don't
for
ask for approval.
asking for your father's hand in marriage is outdated. I'm more of a traditionalist, right? I think that's like a beautiful thing, right? Like ask for the parents' permission. And so you need to be careful how you handle that. But I think they handled it really well because they set it up for Jesus to say, you know, I came to divide, right? I did not bring a peace, but a sword. I came to divide father against son and mother against daughter. I thought they handled that really well.
Yeah.
Right. The main issue that I have with this actually comes from episode 3, right? Because, and I'm going to spoil episode 3 here because if you're watching this, you've already seen all 3 of them, obviously. So at the end of episode 3, Rhema dies, right? And we'll talk a lot about that when we get to the episode 3 spoiler part. But Rhema dying in episode 3 changes the impact of some of the stuff that is said here to me.
Yeah.
Because it makes me wonder, like, it makes the jokes not land as much, right? Because first off, so basically Thomas and Rhema, they ask for this permission thing, and Jesus agrees to it. And then Jesus follows this up by asking Thomas, what are you going to get Rhema for a gift? Right? So he is the one now, like, he does clarify to them, well, we'll save these, we'll set out the details after, you know, after we mourn for John, right? So he does push it off to me, which was him noticeably, like, you know, like he's pushing it off for a reason, right? But then he like initiates and says, what gift are you going to get her? Right? And this is basically setting up a really funny joke, right? To where he's like, oh, well, she said she didn't want a gift. And then Simon jumps in and is like, whoa. This is what a woman says. This is what a woman means, right? And then Jesus like agrees and says, yeah, you should listen to Simon. You need to get her a gift, right? And that joke was really funny. Like that was another laugh out loud moment to me in that episode.
I agree.
But now that Rhema dies at the end, going back, I'm like, because I guess it really hinges on how much Jesus knew. Right? Because the Gospels, we have to recognize that they aren't very clear on exact, like, you know, how do we understand the hypostatic union of Christ? He is truly God, truly man. We know that he didn't know, like he says that nobody knows the hour of his coming, neither like the angels in heaven or even the Son of Man, but just the Father, right? So we know that to a degree, Jesus' knowledge was limited, but there are some other things where Jesus does know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The way they played in episode 3 is almost like Jesus did not know Rhema was going to die.
Yeah.
Right? Because like in episode 3, they have him like walking away and he doesn't turn around until like he hears Mary Magdalene like scream.
Yes.
But then whenever he gets back in there and Thomas is like begging him about it, he says, no, this like has to happen basically, which seems to suggest that Jesus knew this was going to happen, which then to me changes the nature of this joke, right? Because like this is where I like this whole situation to me could have been like, you're going to begin to see why I have a problem with the thing at the end of episode 3. Because it's an entirely fictional plot point that could have been avoided altogether. It, to me, seems to be bringing up controversy just for the sake of controversy. Because to me, it almost seems like Jesus is like teasing them here, which seems kind of messed up, right? It's like, because he's the one who's telling Thomas, you need to get her a gift.
Mhm.
But he's telling him to do this for a marriage that he knows is not going to happen, right? And he knows that she's going to die. And to be fair, God can do what he wants, right? And we don't want to like read motives into God. But to me, I just don't feel as careful. Like if I was creating a fictional storyline, I would not necessarily feel comfortable to put that type of questionable motives on God.
You're like teetering on
Right?
the edge.
Yeah, because the thing is, some people like if people criticize this as being really messed up, I would understand it. Right? Other places I have defended The Chosen like crazy, and I've been like, hey guys, sometimes you're just like, just read the Bible and this is plausible. And I would say that this is plausible as well, but was it necessary?
Yeah.
Right? Like in the past, like Jesus, practicing for a sermon, to me, that is plausible. And I think it's necessary because it's challenging our perspective of what it means to be the Son of God, right?
Yeah.
Like, did he practice for sermons? Like, I could see why they would want to explore that, right? Because it's challenging things we take for granted. Or Jesus saying, I am the law of Moses, right? I get that. And I understand him like telling little James that he's not going to heal him, right? Those things to me, I get what the goal was because it's communicating something about really just challenging our typical preconceived notions. Whereas this whole thing, to me, it just gives me a bitter aftertaste to where I watched episode 2 and I was like, that's a funny joke. But if you read this in light of Jesus knowing that Rhema's going to die, it almost seems like he's setting like he's almost making a false promise to Thomas, right? He is telling him, go buy a gift because you're going to marry this girl. And then he's taking that promise away, right? That bothers me because once again, is it plausible? Sure. But did you need to put the Son of God in that situation? No. Right? Because like, I don't know what's being gained by asking that question.
Right.
Because really, you're just almost like, you're teetering on the possibility of making Jesus look like a jerk. Right? And to me, that's very different from what you see with the little James thing. Right? Because the little James thing, it's just discipleship, right? He's saying, hey, I'm going to ask things of my followers that I do not ask of other people. Right? And I understood that one. This one, though, this is where it rubs me the wrong way because I'm like, man, you are like, I don't know why you're challenging it, right? Because was Rhema's death necessary? I don't know. And we'll get there. But to me, it changes how that joke lands to where when I'm rewatching episode 2, I don't think I'll be able to enjoy the joke anymore. Because now I'm going to be like, you're telling him to get a gift for somebody like, she's going to like it's one thing if he just allows it to happen, right? It's one thing if it's one thing if all the other guys encourage Thomas to go do it and then Jesus just doesn't say anything, right? But this is like almost like him intentionally giving him hope in order to take it away. And that's the issue that I have. And I might reflect on it more. And who knows, maybe stuff that happens later on will justify it.
Yeah.
But that's where that's what I'm really wrestling through right now.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to just hop on and like, I'm not going to call Dallas Jenkins a heretic or anything like that. Because some people, they just immediately jump to that. That's not what I'm doing. I just want to figure out what the goal was here. Right? Because it seems like you're putting Jesus in a very morally questionable place.
Yeah.
And if you're going to do that, it needs to be justified as a story. And so I don't know. And once again, that could be fixed by Jesus not knowing that she was going to die, but you need to clarify that he didn't know that.
Right.
Right. And so I don't know. That's just, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I could see how it's definitely kind of teetering like on the edge of just like some weird boundaries, like weird ground. And I see, I think what they were trying to do, because whenever I saw, well, I mean, this more has to do with the end of episode 3. I see what point they were trying to make with it, and kind of like the parallel between that and kind of, you already mentioned it, like with little James. I loved the scene with little James. Like that is one of my favorite scenes. Like I think it's fantastic. Really like that. I think that might be my one of my favorite scenes from the entire series as a whole. I really liked that scene a lot, and I thought it drove home a really important point. And I see what they were trying to do, but again, with like the shock factor situation, I feel like it was almost kind of like, I don't know, a forced thing, because you kind of already talked about, I think, the same point that they were trying to make with little James. And so now, I mean, this is something else we can talk about when we get to the end of season, end of episode 3. But it does seem kind of not unwarranted, but not necessarily like purposeful,
Yeah.
I guess. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's also another part, which I didn't even think about this until I was reflecting on it more. It makes what Jesus says even darker because,
oh yeah,
like, no, because think
yeah,
about it.
I thought
So,
about that and I was like, I'm never gonna be able to
yeah,
think of
because the thing is, they come and ask if like
yeah,
they can get married, and he turns and says, "I came not to bring peace, but a sword."
yeah.
By the end of episode 3, Rayma is literally stabbed with a sword,
Mm-hmm.
like to where like when I just watched episode 2, I was like, "That's a great place to stay that." But now, when Jesus says, "I came not to bring peace, but a sword," and then the next episode, you have
It's
the
stabbed with
woman
a
that he was
sword.
just like the whole reason he said this statement was
Was the
because of her
conversation.
circumstances, and now she's literally being stabbed with a sword. It just it's gonna hit different to me.
Yeah,
Like it
it
makes
has
me
a little
wonder
bit
if
of a
like
sour taste.
yeah, like to where I don't know, like once again, the rest of the season might fix this.
Mm,
But right now, what happens at the end of episode 3 to me ruins this beautiful moment in episode
yeah,
2.
yeah,
Because it's like like because that's kind of a really dark joke. If he knows she's gonna die and he knows how she's gonna die,
mm,
and then they say, "Can we get married?" and he says, "I came not to bring peace but a sword." That's kind of
yeah.
messed up.
Yeah,
And
because standalone, I think the scene is really good. But it's whenever you add it in context of the end of episode 3
yeah,
that it
so
makes it kind of
yeah.
weird.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to see how they handle it. We'll talk more about Raymond's death in episode 3.
Mm.
I just wanted to mention that because that was just weird to me. Okay, so they eventually get to Caesarea Philippi, and there's this one little joke I wanted to mention again because once again, this was like a clever, just like joke. They get there, and the disciples are explaining to Matthew the whole like gates of hell thing and stuff, and then he's talking about like, oh, they're going to sacrifice goats, and then, like they say something along the lines of like, oh no, they're going to do something much worse.
And he just
And
stands there for a minute.
it's great because they don't have to explain it to the audience. But if you know anything about pagan cultures and stuff, they did some weird stuff. And like Pan was the like goat, like he was the god of the wild, and he was like a goat god. And the temple prostitution was a thing in pagan cultures.
Yeah.
And so whenever it says they're gonna do much worse things, just let your mind go, like don't go too crazy with it. But like
Let's just say there's a reason in the Levitical law that
it says don't sleep with animals.
Yes.
Yeah. I just thought it was so, like Matthew's reaction was so funny, and it was such like it was a very PG way of communicating a very X-rated thing.
Yeah.
To where it was like if in a sermon you would usually say no, Pan, like you would do it exactly what I just explained, right? You'd be like, well,
Yeah.
Pan was the goat god, and there was temple prostitution and stuff. Whereas with them, they're just like, oh, they're doing much worse than sacrificing, and you're like, what could be worse than sacrificing? Oh my. And that was just to be a very
And
a very funny thing.
for it to happen to Matthew too, I just think it's funny. Just because Matthew is like not innocent, but like he has like a very like innocent, like childlike character.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just kind of funny that it
Yeah.
happened to him too.
Yeah. One thing right here, we do have somebody was saying, I also don't think the writers were intentionally trying to do that. They are human after all. And I do agree with that, right? I'm not in any way trying to suggest that the writers have false motives. I'm just once again speaking from a storytelling perspective that you have to consider how things are going to be perceived. Anytime you tell a story, the whole goal is communication, right? You can't simply think, oh, this is what I'm saying. You have to think, how is it going to be heard, right? Every time I preach a sermon, I can't just take for granted that everybody knows about the Bible what I know. I have to explain it to them, right? And so whenever you're telling a story, you have to explain it to the audience. That's more what I'm criticizing, right? I'm not in any way like that. That's the difference between like I think what I do and what a lot of people do. A lot of people, they will just like attack the writers and say like they're heretics. They're like, I'm not saying that, right? To me, I think that the writers have demonstrated that they're good, right? Like I think that they have the best intentions. I'm just saying the optics of it, right? Like just watching it the first time, as soon as I saw Raymond die in episode 3, my mind immediately went back to that scene in episode 2, right? And it wasn't me just analyzing it. It was like just immediately I was like, wow, that changes that joke.
Yeah.
Right? Like just the episode hadn't even ended yet. And I was already thinking, it left a bad taste in my mouth. Right? To where other people in the audience were crying. And I was sitting there like, ooh, I don't know. Right? So I'm not trying to say the writers have bad intentions. I think that they had good intentions. We just have to be careful on how this is, what this is portraying. Because for instance, imagine somebody who was not a believer watch this. They're probably going to think that Jesus is a big old jerk. Right? Because in other places, Jesus demonstrated that he has foreknowledge. Right? And so there's just so much ambiguity there that you need, like, they need to handle this really well going forward. So I think Jesus is probably going to have a tough conversation with Thomas in the next few episodes, and hopefully they'll be able to mend it there. That's just that's just something I want to be aware of. Let's see. I'm trying to see if Hey, Against the Current. Hello. That last scene definitely changed the way you look at the past 2 episodes. For sure. For sure. Also, good to see you. Hello.
Mhm.
Also, doesn't Get Thee Behind Me, Satan happen in the name change scene? Why didn't they do? Oh, I didn't even think about
I
that.
didn't think of that either.
They didn't put that there. That's interesting.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
an important moment too.
Yeah.
And I feel like it would have added to the other, like the struggles and stuff that like he was going through in the episode and everything. I feel like it would
Yeah.
have added to the weight of that too to include that. I wouldn't see why that would take away from anything.
Yeah. So for those of y'all who don't know, basically what happens is whenever Peter gets his name changed, right? Whenever Jesus says, "Who do others say that I am? Who do you say that I am?"
Mhm.
Simon says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus says, "You are Peter. On this rock I'll build my church."
Mhm.
In all the Gospels, in the immediate next scene, what happens is Jesus begins to predict to them what's going to happen to him. He says, "We're going to go down to Jerusalem. I'm going to suffer. I'm going to die."
Mhm.
And Peter says, "We're never going to let that happen." And Jesus says, "Get thee behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." I did not even think about the fact that they did skip
Yeah,
that.
I didn't
That
think
is
of it
a
either.
that's a good point. Man, that is a weird thing to skip.
Yeah.
Because a big part of the story is that contrast, right? You have Peter at the height of things and at the lowest, right? I
Mhm.
mean, like on one moment he's being called the Rock, the next moment he's being called Satan, right? I mean, you can't be
Yeah.
like on one he's prevailing over the gates of hell, on the other one he's he's opening the gates of hell.
Yeah.
To where it's like, wow, I did not even think they skipped that.
Yeah.
But
And
that,
I'm
oh, sorry,
and I was gonna say even him like whenever he's laying in bed and he's like you can see he's very much like torn over what's going on and he's contemplating things and he's thinking about all these things. Like that would have added to it too
yeah,
if you had that more like stark contrast between him saying that you were the rock and then get behind me, Satan. Like
yeah.
that would really add to his contemplation as he's laying there
And it
and
would add
thinking
fuel to
about
the
it.
fire for the conversations that followed with like the disciples debating.
Oh yeah.
Because like the whole thing is they're debating about, is Peter really meant for this? And like if you have Jesus calling him Satan,
Yeah.
like that's
Well,
interesting.
and
Yeah.
even the conflict with Matthew too. Like
Yeah.
with that and that coming to a resolution,
Hmm.
that would have added weight behind that also.
Yeah, I didn't. Wow, thanks for highlighting that. I
Yeah,
did not
that's
even.
really good.
Yeah, I did not even notice. Oh yeah, we have this person saying, "I'm confused what Jesus meant when he said it's not her time." This is referring to whenever Raymond was dying.
Oh, yeah.
That was a weird phrasing
I
because
thought it was
usually you would think
also
that meant it's not her
her
time
time
to
to
like die,
die. Yeah.
but it was almost like it's not her time to receive a miracle or something. That was very strange. Um, yeah, I don't know. Okay. So
Especially because all throughout the gospels, whenever Jesus is talking about crucifixion, he's like, it's not yet time. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like that is a common phrase that's said throughout the gospel about talking about Jesus dying. And so
yeah,
for him to say like it's not her time, it's like, well, that's
yeah. Well, because whenever he said it, I was like, oh, is he about to resurrect her? But then like he didn't. I was like, oh,
yeah.
okay, yeah. That phrase.
Yeah.
But that could be something where in later episodes he'll explain what he
Yeah.
meant by that.
Yeah.
So I'll let that slide. Okay. One thing I just want to mention is that Caiaphas was introduced here. The high priest. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I thought he did a good job. I am currently working on a book that I hope, I don't know if I'm ever going to publish it. I might just write it for myself because I enjoy writing. But it is talking about the death and resurrection of Christ. And I've been thinking a lot about Caiaphas lately. So I thought it was really cool to see him portrayed on the big screen. That was
Yeah.
really fun. And then Simon's name change. We kind of already talked about it.
Yeah.
I thought the scene was done really well. First off, the set. I've already talked about this in previous videos. The set is, mwah. It looks
Yeah.
like I've been to Caesarea Philippi several times, and like the diagrams they have of what it used to look like. I mean, it looks exactly like what they had at the show. Like that was awesome. And so I thought they did a very good job handling that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Okay. Other thing. Let's see. Matthew talking with Jesus. Just the campfire scene. Probably that was probably aesthetically my favorite scene.
Yeah.
Right. Just I always like warm lights and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What did you think about his conversation with Jesus?
That was probably up there in one of my favorite scenes for these 3 episodes. Probably because I just really like the relationship that they have built between Jesus and Matthew. Whenever we were watching that scene, I immediately thought back to whenever Matthew was helping write the Sermon on the Mount, like the Beatitudes. And I just think it's cool the relationship they've built where kind of like Matthew and Jesus have these like aside moments. But then also I guess the moral of the lesson of what he was teaching him and the realization that he made him come to.
Yeah.
It almost makes you convicted yourself whenever you're
Yeah.
watching it. You're like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And then you start kind of reflecting like on your own thoughts and your own actions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoyed the scene. Probably because I really like Matthew and Jesus' relationship and how they've kind of like flesh that out throughout the seasons.
Yeah, well, in scripture, John is the beloved disciple, but in the show,
it seems
like more Matthew. Like, because we haven't really seen that bond between Jesus and John that much, but Jesus and Matthew do have a special bond.
Yeah, I think
so we're
that's
like,
cool.
I even like it because like the way that conversation even starts is that everybody's debating about Peter, and then Matthew's like, "Well, I'm just gonna go ask Jesus."
Yeah,
like,
he's like, "I got a solution."
Like you can tell that he's uncomfortable with the whole debate, and
Mhm.
he's like, "They're just debating about stuff that they can't find answers to. I'm just gonna go ask the man himself." And so
Yeah.
Matthew gets up, he walks over to Jesus and says, "Hey, what's the deal with this Peter thing?
Yeah.
Because I don't think that he's fit for this job because he hasn't forgiven me." And then Jesus says, "Well, you haven't asked for forgiveness." And he's like, "Well, he wouldn't give it to me anyways." And he says, "Well, you don't ask for forgiveness for forgiveness. Well, you don't apologize for forgiveness. You apologize for repentance," which is a very good message.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's something people need to learn. People think, "Oh, all because I apologize, you get forgiven." No, you apologize because it's the right thing to do. And we choose to forgive people. But all because you apologize doesn't mean other people are going to forgive you. Right? In the perfect world where everybody's following Jesus, yes. But you should apologize, not because you're seeking something out of it, but because it's the right thing to do. That was good. Matthew's acting, like just the moment he realizes all he's done,
it's very good.
It's like he's learning empathy.
Yeah.
Right? That's the cool thing. It's like he was like, "Oh,
yeah,
wow." And like he's like, and like he even like stands up and he's like, it's almost like he gets shocked by how evil he really is. Like it's like he's never fully processed the true depth of his sin.
Yeah.
And he realizes what he like from Peter's perspective, he's like, "Wow, I didn't realize it was that bad." And so he felt convicted by it. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
That whole scene was like you said, probably my favorite episode of the season. Like the scene between Matthew and Jesus and then later Peter and Jesus are my favorite scenes of this episode. Like those are the ones that made it.
Yeah.
Later on, we do have I love the little thing with whenever Matthew's talking with Tamar while they're walking, and Matthew's talking about how Jesus gives him a look, and then like to know when to write, and then Tamar's like, "Oh, are you supposed to write something down?" And Matthew's like, "No, this looks something different." Like I love that. Like once again, Matthew and Jesus' bond. Like Matthew, he can read the looks, right? He knows that there's a look for writing and there's a look for doing.
Yeah.
And he's like, "That wasn't the writing look. That was the I need to do something look." And I just love that. It's like just little like Jesus knows Matthew so well. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
Oh, you also mentioned the pistachio dude.
Oh yeah, so they're going down the road and they're getting pistachios, and they're like, "Okay, get this many servings of pistachios," and they pay their money, and the dude starts scooping the pistachios, and then as they start to walk off, Jesus just walks past and he's like, "Thanks, man," or he says something like that, and he like pats him on the shoulder and then just keeps on walking. And I leaned over to David in the theater and I said, "This dude who is selling pistachios for a living has no idea that he just got pat on the shoulder by the Son of God." Like he's just, and then you just see him in the background. He's over there fixing his little cart with his pistachios and all his fruits and nuts. And I was like, that dude has no idea that he just came in contact with God in the flesh. It's like, that's just so crazy.
Yeah.
Very like not important to the
storyline,
but I thought it was cool.
Yeah.
Like
I've thought about that too. Like there's been times where I've thought about like, do you know how crazy it would have been to be like, Jesus delivering the Sermon on the Mount, and then like you're just the dude who happened to just be like 2 miles down the road who had no idea that was going down.
Yeah.
Like it's like you just.
I mean, I guess it's a little bit like what is the movie Ben-Hur? Like
Ben-Hur. Yes. Yeah.
I guess I was like, oh, someone needs to make the movie of like someone living in the time of Jesus, but then like not being his disciple. And then I was like, wait, that's kind of Ben-Hur.
Well, except Ben-Hur at least doesn't get impacted by Jesus. Imagine just being this pistachio guy. Like you're watching this whole movie about his journey, and then just like one dude walks by one day and just happens to be Jesus, and then just moves on, and like the movie never explains it.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. That would just be so funny.
Yeah.
The Matthew and Jesus scene was so well done. I agree. The moment Matthew finally realizes how he really hurt Simon was priceless. Yeah. Paris Patel, he's just a great actor. He does a great job with that. Okay, jumping forward, let's talk about the Peter and Jesus scene. This one, I love it, but I also, this is probably one of the, so it's one of my favorite scenes of this episode, but it was kind of almost intentionally cheesy from my perspective, mainly because they did like, I could tell that they were setting up the whole, how many times should I forgive somebody? Right. I could tell they were heading, that's where they were setting up. And I could tell that that's kind of where they were heading with this whole Peter and Matthew thing since like season 1, right? You could tell that's what it was setting up. The cheesy part to me is that they literally had Peter list out 7 things.
Yeah.
Which that seems like something that Matthew would do, not something that Peter would do.
Yeah, it doesn't align with the character as much.
Because like Matthew, I can imagine him being like, well, here's 1 thing, 2 things, 3. Like Peter, I could not see Peter being like 7. But to me, they handled it in a way to where like it was cheesy, but I got what they were doing, and so I was fine with it.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't cheesy enough to where it got me out of it. I was more just like,
I see what you
like
did
it was more like an
there.
eye roll. Like, wow, they didn't have to do that. Like, they easily could have just said, like, how many times? 7? Like, they could have easily done that.
Mhm.
Like, there has never been a time where I've read the Gospels and wondered, I wonder if Peter literally had 7 things in mind there. I've
Mhm.
never thought that. I've always thought he's just throwing out a number, right? But they're like, no, like we're gonna make this 7. And that, like, to me, I was more just like chuckling because to me, I felt like the writers were chuckling at that, right? Like, because they knew
Yeah.
they didn't have to do that, right? They could have just had him throw it out there, but they're like, no, we are going to have Peter list out 7 ways that Matthew's messed up. And then Jesus says, well, no, 77. And then Peter's like, well, I'm sure that if I broke them down into the different
And he's
categories,
like,
I could do
yeah.
that. Which once again seems like a Matthew thing to say,
Yeah.
right? But it just worked. So to me, it was cheesy, but it was like cheesy in like a eye roll, like, okay, ha
Yeah.
ha ha way. It didn't take me out of the story.
Yeah, I feel like if you think at it from a certain perspective, it almost kind of fits. If you think about the context of after he finishes talking to Jesus and he walks off, and he picks up a twig and he splits it in half, and then he kind of looks, and then he just chucks one piece and waits, and then chucks another. And I'm like, I feel like that highlights the like 2 extremes that Peter goes on. Like in the
Yeah.
Gospels where he's like super high on this side, and he's like, yeah, go Jesus, like we're always gonna be here for you. And then he's like super just like mad, angry, gonna chop someone's ear off situation. So I feel like if you look at it from that perspective and you remember that he snapped a stick in half in the middle of the night and threw it into a field, I feel like it makes sense because it's almost like a toddler that has like a lot of emotions and they don't know how to like express them or handle them. Just like I work with first graders and like that's what they don't know how to express their emotions. That's what I feel like, and I feel like that aligns with Peter. He has so much going on and he feels big feelings.
Yeah. Well, and I love
and he doesn't know how to express it, and so he's like, well, I can list 7. Well, I mean, I guess if I think about it, I mean, I could list 77. Like,
yeah, but it's just so funny because like whenever he finally snaps the stick, like you're trying to figure out why. Like, and the reason he seems to be snapping the stick is because he knows that Jesus is correct, but he doesn't want Jesus to be correct, and he's just like it's like, is he mad that Jesus is correct, or is he mad at himself for not like? It's just so funny. Like, but that's what I'm talking about. The humor there was funny. Like, it's just it makes sense for the character, right? To where you still have this emotionally deep moment where you're learning about the depth of forgiveness. And Jesus is like, no, you have to forgive.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is like, it's not an option for my followers. You need to forgive. And then like into where like that preaches, right? Like you're watching this, and you're like, yes, you do have to. Right. And he even says, like, Peter, remember what I did for you, right? And then in that scene, you also get more flashbacks to like Jesus, like once again, the catching the fish and stuff, right? And Peter's like, dang it, I knew he'd bring that up because he was like, I was thinking about that earlier tonight, right? And to where that was like, it was just such a brilliant moment to where like I just loved like just the lingering shot. It felt like it was out of an 80s movie, like just something where it's like you've got Jesus in the foreground and then you just got Peter in the background. And I love it. And Jesus doesn't look, he just like smiles because he knows, right? He hears he hears the stick snapping and then he hears and Jesus just smiles. That cracked me up. Like that,
good.
Like that was good humor, right? Because it didn't take away from the moment because like it felt true to the moment. Like if Peter was in that situation, that is 100% how Peter would respond.
Yeah.
Like he would just be like, whatever, I'll do this. Like, and you can tell that like he's mad because like he knows that he has to forgive him.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to.
Well, it's literally like the spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Yeah.
Like that is what he's.
Well, and I think he's also frustrated by the fact because he's like, I can't waste any time on this. Like, I need to get this figured out. Like, it's almost like he's realizing, like, I'm not getting to bed tonight. Like, he's like, okay, if I have to forgive him, I need to do this now. And then sure enough, at the end of the episode, when he just like storms in there, he just like gives Matthew a hug. He's just like, I finally got there. Like, I haven't been sleeping. And like, I can almost imagine like whenever he like marches off at the end of the episode, he's probably going to go take a nap.
Yeah.
He's like, now that I've finally given him
get
a hug.
some rest.
Okay. So two more things I wanted to talk about this episode. One of them was, Gaius seeing Matthew and basically Gaius explaining how like life has gotten more complicated. I love Matthew's line there where he says, Jesus has a way of like simplifying things, right? Yeah. Where my life was complicated, he simplified it. And he says, I have only one thing to do today, follow him. The rest takes care of itself.
I love that.
I thought you would like this because it sounded like it could be a Winnie the Pooh quote.
Oh, right? Man.
I only have one thing to do today, follow him.
That is very much, man.
Yeah.
I like that.
It seemed
I didn't think about Winnie the Pooh.
Brienne's a big Winnie the Pooh person. And to me, it just seemed like my favorite thing to do is nothing. But like, but Matthew, I don't know. I just thought like it seems like something Matthew would say too, right? Because this is a
Yeah.
guy who notices everything. His mind is always on high alert. And now you're beginning to understand why he loves following Jesus so much.
Mhm.
Like Jesus takes the complicated things and makes it simple to him,
Yeah.
right? Because for for his analytical mind, now he has like a filter through which to perceive everything,
Yes.
right? It's simply, what do I do that follows Jesus?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that's like a simple way of doing it.
It
Like,
is,
like
yeah.
we were talking about this with our Bible study group, right? Where
Mhm.
like one of the questions we were asking was, how do you know you're in the will of God?
Mhm.
And really that's it, right? Follow Jesus, right? Like
Yeah.
literally, what can you do today that will bring you closer to Jesus?
Yeah.
Right? If you're trying to figure out what job to do, right? Well, if God specifically makes it clear, go do the job, go do that job.
Yeah.
If not, pick a job and do it for the glory of God.
Serve
Right? Like
faithfully.
just follow Jesus, right? That is
Mhm.
the thing you have to do. And if you are following Jesus with all your heart, you're doing the will of God.
Mhm.
Right? And so I just thought that was a very cool and touching way. I
Yeah.
don't know if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
I just really like that, and I think it's cool that Matthew says that because we see his character from the very beginning. He's very like almost like OCD, like he's worried about all the tiny things and
Yeah.
the small things stress him out. And so I think it's really cool. Like just that one line, I think testifies to how Jesus has worked in his life and how he's changed him. You know, we saw Simon Z and Judas, they were talking and we see how they were kind of changed a little bit. And now we see Peter and how
Yeah.
he's changed a little bit. And now we see Matthew and how he's changed from the beginning of the show until now. And so I think that
Yeah.
that line was just really cool because it really testifies. I mean, anyone can apply it, but I think it really testifies to his story
Yeah.
and how he has personally applied it in his life.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really cool. A very nice universal principle that is easy for like all of us to refer to.
Yeah.
Like that'll preach.
There were a lot of good quotable things in here. There was
I
also
agree.
there was one I leaned over to her. I forget what it was. But I was like, that's going to be on a t-shirt at some point.
Oh yeah.
It was Jesus. It was something that
What
Jesus
was
said
it?
where it was like, I use broken things or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what the quote was.
Yeah.
Okay. Last thing I wanted to talk about was literally just the reconciliation scene between Peter and Matthew. I just thought it was really nice. And there's a parallel because if you remember season 3, episode 2, season 3, episode 1 ended with Matthew knocking on his father's door.
Yes.
Season 3, episode 2 began with Matthew and his father reconciling, which culminated in them hugging one another. Right. And Matthew, remember, that's like where Matthew finally puts his handkerchief down.
Yeah.
Right. So season 3, episode 2 began with Matthew putting his handkerchief down and giving his father a hug.
Yes.
Season 4, episode 2 ends with Matthew returning a hug to Peter.
Yeah.
And that I thought was just really cool. I just thought that was like
I didn't even think of that.
Yeah, and that's just from analyzing the show so much. It's like I know what every episode is, and it's like, like I was like, oh, that's a cool parallel.
Yeah.
And especially because it's alluded to, because I mean that event was quite early, like a lot earlier, and I think Matthew even mentions that right to Jesus. He says, I mean, after your sermon, I immediately went to reconcile with my dad, and I've put off reconciling with Peter this whole time.
Yeah.
Right. And he says, and what I did to Peter is probably a lot worse. Right. And so, like, to me, like that's what kind of made me think of the parallel. I was like, oh, I see what they're doing here. Right. Because, yeah. So I thought that was like a really neat thing to where you still see that it's a progression of like the effects of the Sermon on the Mount are still being felt. So that was really cool. Yeah. And so this, I think we can justify Peter's 7-item listing as him knowing Matthew more now. I actually almost said that, right? It's almost like he doesn't even know the influence Matthew's having on him.
Yeah.
Even he's thinking in lists now. It's like, oh no. I just thought that was funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So I got home from the theater. So many great one-on-one moments. Absolutely.
Yay.
Okay, cool. So that was episode 2. You ready to go to episode 3?
Yeah.
All right. Let me put my little thing up here. Episode 3, spoilers ahead. Let's do this. All right. So I hate to break it to you, but episode 3, I was just not the biggest fan of. Right. And it's mainly because the end, right? The end of it, like it just like the end sequence, basically from the moment that Jesus runs into Shula and Barnaby to the end of it, I was really not enjoying it that much. Yeah. And I'm just trying to be entirely honest here. Not trying to be overly critical, but I am going to just a heads up. I'm probably going to share a lot of criticisms here.
Yeah.
And some of them are maybe valid. Some of them are not. Some of them are just my opinion.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Don't crucify me in the comments, please. Or I guess you can if you want to. I mean, either way, it's I guess, interactions and helps the YouTube channel out. I don't know. But I'm just going to share my opinions.
Yeah.
But let's begin with that opening flashback. Let's talk about David and Bathsheba. I will say right off the bat, they only gave us a 5-minute intermission. I was expecting a little longer.
Yeah.
We
were hustling.
Yeah, we actually walked in a little bit late because we got up, we went to the restroom, and I had to go like buy a water and stuff like that.
I feel
And
like we were gone that long though. It was crazy.
Yeah, we weren't gone that long, but I guess our theater is just kind of big.
Yeah.
And so in the time it took us to get up, walk out, use the restroom, and buy a water, and there was no line in the concessions, right? I bought the water and everything, all of that happened. By the time we got back, the episode was already playing.
Yeah.
I think we only missed like maybe 20 or 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But it was like, whoa, that was a very quick intermission. I was expecting it to be like 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah.
But that's okay. Okay, so David and Bathsheba, what did you think about it?
I thought it was really cool. I liked the story of David, and so I thought it was cool that they've done flashbacks with David before, right? Yeah.
Same actor.
Was it really?
Yep.
I guess I didn't really pay attention to that,
Yeah.
but yeah, cool. Anyways, I was interested to see how, at the beginning of the episode, I was like, I wonder how they're going to tie this in, just because they were doing an Old Testament flashback and they hadn't done one yet. But I like the story of David, so I was all about them having a flashback to then.
Part of me wonders if they're just like setting up a David show or something like that eventually.
Yeah, because they've done more than one.
Well, they've done like 3, I think.
Yeah.
Because they've done David getting bread from Ahimelech, and then they've done David and Bathsheba in the last season at the very episode
when
8.
they're on the throne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then now this one.
Yeah.
They seem to like the actor a lot, but that's another thing. One of the criticisms. I get what they were going for the parallels between this and what happens with Rama at the end.
Yeah.
I don't think it works.
Yeah, to me, after I watched the entire episode, I was wondering as to why they put it there, because to me, it felt kind of out of place, or it felt like, I don't know, it was almost kind of forced, like, oh, we've done David flashbacks before, and so maybe we should include another or something like that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it didn't really maybe hit home the way they were wanting it to, because even right now, I'm still trying to figure out, like, why they creatively chose to use
the
that
reason
one.
why they did it, I think, is because with David in this story, you have an example of somebody praying for God to do something and God not answering the prayer, right? So like he's saying, save my child, and God lets the child die. The reason why that doesn't work for me, and the thing is, I think that like I don't have a problem with, like, I do not, let me just clarify this right off the bat. I do not have a problem with Jesus allowing Rama to die at the end of the episode, right? That is not the issue that I have.
Yeah.
I'm just saying for the parallel, it doesn't work because in the context of the David story, the reason the child dies is as punishment for David's sin, right? And so unless you're going to argue that Rama's death is punishment for Thomas's sin, the parallel doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right? I think that you would have had to use a different story to drive that point home. I actually think, this to spoil what we're going to talk about in a second. I actually think that Rama's death has more to do with James and John's whole thing about the ask and it will be given to you, right? Because their whole thing is like, the mama saying, well, all you have to do is ask and it will be given. Well, Thomas proves that that's not true, right?
True.
So I think that parallel works better. The David thing, it doesn't land as well. And I think, but I did like seeing the flashback though, because that is one of my, it's one of my favorite stories because that's the story I preached on with when my dad died. And to be fair, I don't think that my dad died as a result of sin, but my point was not about the prayer, right? Like whenever I preached on my dad, like at my dad's death, my sermon was not saying I prayed and prayed and prayed and God said no. That's not what it was. I simply said God made his decision. Now I must make mine. Yeah. Right. So it's like God has chosen to do this. Now I must choose to worship. Right. If that's the direction they're heading with Thomas, cool. Right. It really just hinges, like, I think episode 4 will help clarify that parallel. Right. Because right now it seems like the parallel just doesn't work as much. Yeah. But how Thomas responds to this, I think, will dictate things.
Yeah, I was about to say, we haven't seen much of his reaction other than initial shock factor of what's happening. Yeah. So yeah, how he responds is definitely you're going to have to see if he's going to be painted more like Bathsheba or he's going to be more painted like David. Yeah. Because they have two different kind of responses to the situation. Yeah,
but I thought I thought it was really cool to see the flashback just because that is one of my favorite stories. I love.
Yeah, it's very good.
Like just the whole, how David responds to the death of his child is almost like the quintessential moment that proves what a man after God's own heart is.
Yes.
To where it almost felt rushed to me because like he just gets up and like in the actual story, like the people are concerned. And like Jesus and David overhears the fact that the son is dead.
Yes.
Right? Like he hears people talking and he says the son, like, my child's dead, isn't he? And they're like they didn't want to tell him because they were
It's a
afraid he's
good
gonna
way
kill
say
himself.
it, Yeah.
Yeah. And so like whereas in this one they kind of just go and tell him and he says, okay, let's do this. And like it's almost like they knew, okay, time to give him the robes and stuff.
Yeah.
So like it was a little bit different than how I would have imagined it.
Yeah.
But I think that they framed it the way they did just for the sake of time.
Yeah.
Like we need to condense it.
Yeah.
And so yeah, and so I don't know. I just thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
I like David scenes. David is behind Jesus, my favorite character in the Bible. Not because my
Mhm.
name is David, but because he's awesome, and I consider it a privilege to share names with him.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anytime we get David, I think it's really cool. Wait, please tell us about a scene before telling us what you don't like about it. It's hard to follow. I will try my best. I think we've been trying to do that, but yeah, we're talking about the David and Bathsheba scene right now. Okay, next scene we're going to talk about. Just if there's ever anything you want to specifically highlight, let me know.
Okay.
I'm just highlighting the things that I have stars next to.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about James and John with the parents, right? I already kind of alluded to this a second ago, but James and John going before Salome and Zebedee, and they can tell that something's wrong with James and John. And James and John admit that Peter has a new title, and Salome has thoughts. This is ultimately setting up something that's going to happen in Scripture.
Yeah.
What are your opinions about all this?
I think that this is a good plot point for character development because we've seen, rivalry between Matthew and Peter, but that's very different from what's happening with James and John. And so I see where they're going with like seeing like who's like the greatest in heaven, and like I see where they're trying to go with it, and I think it's a good point. It's going to add a realistic idea of probably what the disciples thought about because there's these 12 imperfect people trying to follow the Son of God on earth. And so they're going to be fighting about these types of things and trying to understand what's going on. And so I think it was a good plot point, and I think it was a good way to kind of set up, I guess, what they're going to do in future episodes.
Yeah. And Salome, she so her whole thing here is that she's misunderstanding in the Sermon on the Mount where Jesus says, ask and it will be given. Right. And this is a way where I think it's a very smart thing they're doing, because this is something that preaches to our modern culture, because people misquote that verse all the time. Right. They say, oh, this is why we say in Jesus' name, amen. Right. Like we like to ask because we think, oh, if I just pray it, it'll happen. And it's kind of like prosperity theology. And that's kind of what she's alluding to here. But whenever they actually do ultimately ask, and Zebedee kind of tries to get onto her, says, I don't think that's what it means, right? Yeah. But whenever you actually read the gospel accounts, which I'm assuming it's building to in this season, they ask, can we sit at your right and left hand? And he responds to them, can you drink the cup that I'm going to drink? And they say yes. And he says, okay, well, I don't decide who sits at my right and left hand, but you will drink the cup. And so they're asking for positions at his right and left. And in return, he says, you're going to suffer. Yeah. And so it's like, be careful what you ask for, right? Because like if you want to be like, you are going to suffer, right? And so where this is going to head, I think it's going to be a very poignant message. Yeah. Right. And like I said, I think this does parallel with the Thomas and Raymond thing more, because Thomas is asking Jesus to resurrect him, and he's not getting what he asked for, right? And so I think this proves the point. At the same time, we talked about this. It seemed like they were setting up this conversation between James and John and Jesus in this episode. And now, after like the Rhema thing happens, I'm going to be interested to see how they resolve this. Because it seems like you can't just like move past this Rhema thing in like one episode, right? Like if they just move on, it would feel like, unless there's like this huge time jump or something like that, it wouldn't feel right. And so I'm going to be interested to see how they set it up to where James and John think that it's the right time to go up and ask Jesus about this, right? Because it seems like right now they should be focused on healing over the fact that like their friend was brutally murdered. Yeah. Right. And it seems like the last thing on their mind would be, ooh, who's going to sit at the right and left hand? And so like, that was an interesting thing to me. Like, I was like, oh, that's weird. Like, I was surprised they didn't do it in this episode, because like, it seems like this Rhema thing, if it doesn't affect the rest of the season, I don't know. Like, that just be wild. A weird dynamic. Yeah. And so I'm assuming they're going to have it in there, but I'm going to be interested to see if it feels natural, because I don't know. To me, it seems extremely like it's already inappropriate to ask that. Like, it even felt inappropriate whenever like Salome was like, my sons deserve more.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's what moms do, right?
Right, yeah.
I would actually argue that passage is a good argument for demonstrating that the disciples were really young, right? She's like a helicopter mom.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I'll be interested to see in the future episodes how they incorporate that in a natural way.
Mhm.
I have trust that they can do it.
Mhm.
But very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, let's see here. Okay, let's talk about Thomas and Rama and the sundial.
Mhm.
Right. So Thomas comes and invites Rama to go on a walk. Andrew
Mhm.
is their chaperone
Mhm.
because apparently John would allow too much to allow him to get away with too much, which is kind of a funny joke.
Mhm.
And this is the part where I began to realize that
Yeah.
Rama was going to die.
Yeah.
Right. I know a lot of people are saying that they didn't see it coming at all. But good storytellers are going to, they're going to set it up. Right. And as soon as one person turns to another person and says, we're going to be together for eternity.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
whenever
huh.
that's whenever the clock starts ticking, right?
Yeah.
And so as soon as he said that, I was like, ooh. Also, I'm just going to address this because I don't know if anybody else is going to catch this, and I don't like throwing this out here because I might be opening up a can of worms. This is one of those places where if I was one of the chosen writers, I would have been very careful with what they said, mainly because of the doctrine of marriage, right? I don't know if you've thought about this.
Yeah, well, especially in context of other things that people got
Yes.
mad for in previous seasons.
Yeah.
Yes.
So in the past, people have accused the chosen writers of being influenced by Mormon theology, right, or Latter-day Saint theology, and I've been very quick to defend that. And once again, I have plenty of LDS friends. I love them. I disagree with them. We have very different theology, but ultimately, Dallas Jenkins is the creator of the show. He's a Protestant like I am, and so I'm going to defend that it is not overly influencing it. I don't think that Mormon theology is influencing it in this case, but I think that the way that they had Thomas speaking to Rama opens up the possibility of people accusing them of that again.
Yeah.
Because typically speaking, Protestants, whenever they speak of marriage, it is till death do you part, right? That's usually the language we use, right? And typically that's traditionally been how Jewish people spoke of it as well, right? Whereas according to LDS theology, marriage is an eternal covenant, right? And the thing is, I think what Thomas was getting across to Rama is what a guy says to a girl when he says, I want to be with you forever.
Yeah.
Right?
Something sweet. Yeah.
I don't think he was trying to make theological implications with his words. I think he was simply trying to convey his love.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, from the perspective of a chosen writer who is aware of like other backlash they've received.
Yeah.
I'd be careful, right? And I understand that controversy helps with press and stuff like that. This just doesn't seem like one of those overt places. Like, it seems like it's a place where it could be like, it's just an oversight, to where I would just have been, like I would have just changed the wording just a little bit, just to be mindful of it, because it seems like an opportunity for people to begin accusing it all over again.
Yeah.
And there's not much to be gained from that, right? It's like you're just opening up a can of worms unnecessarily. Maybe nobody else will catch it. I don't know. But as soon as he said that, mainly just maybe it's because I cover The Chosen so much and I'm always trying to defend them from that controversy. I think I'm just more aware of it, and I'm usually watching it thinking, where are places that people could pick apart? And as soon as he said something about like, now I'm going to be with you for eternity, I was like, ooh, that could be something that people could twist, because it's like, that's a subtle way but I mean, we know they're not going to be together for eternity now, but and it was specifically in the context being with you romantically for eternity, right? It's not just like hanging out. So that was that was just something interesting. I thought. What else did you think about the sundial scene?
I thought it was really sweet. I think it's like sweet how they've been portraying, like, they're like little romantic. I don't know. They seem the way that they portray them is like almost a lot younger than what they actually are. Like, whenever I see them interacting and stuff, it seems like they're almost like a teenager couple. Like, they're just like so sweet.
This is like they stepped out of Song of Solomon.
Yeah. But I think we kind of talked about it a little bit, that I guess the comments that Thomas was making to Rama, the same like emotion wasn't necessarily like given back to Thomas. That she was talking in kind of like vague, almost like ambiguous.
Ambiguous. Yeah.
There we go. Ambiguous. Like terms. And so that, I guess, could be another reason that you would think that later on. That she was going to die.
Well, that's another thing that clued me off to her death, because the thing is, at first, I will admit, in that scene, she seemed more detached,
Mhm.
And it was weird to me because I was like, wait, is she not into this?
Because whenever
but
they
literally
were
in
in the
oh,
dock
sorry.
scene,
Well, yeah.
the dock scene was.
Well, that's what I was going to say, because I was like, in the previous episode, I mean, she was the one who or I guess episode 1, she was the one who suggested, like, hey, let's get married. Like, let's do this. And I was like, so we know she's invested. And in episode 2, she's the one who's like, let's go talk to Jesus about it now. So we know she's invested in it. But then, like, in that scene, like, he's the one who's like, we're going to be together forever. It's going to be amazing. And she's the one who feels more detached.
Yeah.
And then she's the one who's like looking at a pregnant woman and saying, like the way that scene ends is not it's not a romantic thing. It ends with her muttering to him, and it's whispered where you can barely hear it. But she says, I want us to learn a lesson from Simon and Eden's basically mistake, right? Like, Simon and Eden were not prepared for loss. And so that scene ends with her basically saying, I'm going to die, or we're going to lose something, right? And so it almost like that scene was almost like her saying goodbye in a way, because that's really the last scene I guess we get with her, like, really just like fleshed out, right?
Yeah.
And I think I felt that, and so that's why her death didn't really come as a shock to me. And I think she'd been cast in some other show, and so I'd heard people speculating maybe she wasn't going to be on it forever. And Rayma's not a character who shows up in the Bible or anything, and so whenever there's somebody who just shows up, they're kind of expendable. I hate to say that. Rayma's one of my favorite characters. I really like her.
I really like her too.
But I kind of thought they could be heading in that direction. But yeah, so I felt her saying goodbye there, right? And I was like, okay, it is what it is. But I really love the sundial, like the message behind the sundial, where he's like, I just always lost track of time with you. And I was like, well, that's sweet.
It's
Like,
really
it's like,
sweet.
oh, like that's great. And so yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share about that part. I don't think so. I think we're good there.
Okay.
Let's go talk about. Okay, sorry. So now we're starting to get more to the stuff where I'm going to be overtly critical about the end of this. And so if you loved it, you might want to just check out, or just get ready to just get really mad at me in the comments, right? And I think it's mainly because this puts Jesus, like, everything at the end of this episode kind of puts Jesus in a questionable place, right? And one of those is like, so right before Jesus goes out and like begins to preach and stuff, you've got Jesus eating a meal at Peter's house. And Matthew was like looking out the window nervously. And then Peter walks up and is like, what are you worried about? And Matthew voices the fact that he thinks this is a bad idea, right? And Peter acknowledges, he says, I think it's a bad idea as well, but it'll all work out. And I kind of, like, after seeing what ends up happening, I agree with it. Because if you notice what ends up happening in the event, it's like, first off, a woman gets trampled, and it's not one of the followers of Jesus, right? It's just some random woman, right? And then you have Rayma dying, but she doesn't die a martyr's death, right? It's not like she's dying for her faith. No, it was literally an accidental death, right? She wasn't being killed for her faith. Like, Quintus accidentally draws the sword, and even he seems shocked by what he's done.
Oh, yeah.
He didn't mean to do it. And it was literally like, if Thomas hadn't gone back for Rayma, she wouldn't have died. Like, there's so many different moving parts there. So to me, it almost makes Jesus look irresponsible for no reason, right? And once again, I'm not saying it's impossible, right? I'm just saying that I don't know why you would try to put Jesus in that perspective when it's not advancing a particular biblical cause. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're like, I'm just trying to think from the perspective of a storyteller.
Yeah.
If you're telling a Jesus story, even the fictional elements have to be trying to promote the Jesus of the Bible, and they have to be advancing the biblical cause, right? And to me, it seems like you're putting Jesus in very questionable places. It's one thing if he puts his disciples in a circumstance where they could die for their faith, right? But this almost makes Jesus look very reckless, because everybody around him is saying that he should not do this. But he goes out of his way to do it and cause so much trouble that an innocent bystander gets trampled, and one of his followers accidentally gets killed.
Yeah.
Like, is it beyond God to do something like that? Well, no. God can do whatever he wants, right?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say it's impossible. I'm just saying it's a strange choice to make whenever you're telling like, when you're an author creating a fictional story and you could say, tell any story.
Yeah.
It's a weird light to put Jesus under.
Yeah, it's
right?
like shaky ground.
Well, yeah, like, to where it's like, normally, like in past seasons, I've always been quick to defend them because I can at least understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to challenge you in a good way.
Yeah.
And once again, future episodes might clarify what Jesus' goals were here. But in this one, I'm just like, whenever I look back, like whenever I was rereading my notes, and there's literally this scene where Matthew and Peter are both saying, Like, and you've got Matthew, who is really like the closest one to Jesus, and then
Mhm.
Peter the rock. Both of them are voicing, this does not look like a good idea.
Yeah.
And then you look at what happens at the end, and I'm like,
Yeah.
were they wrong?
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't look like a good idea,
Mhm.
right? I mean, and Jesus is directly disobeying the authorities for like what, like,
Mm.
and obviously, if I don't know, like you're just getting into shaky ground because Jesus and the apostles, they're all about submitting to authorities unless those authorities cause you to disobey God,
Yes.
right? If Jesus had chosen not to preach on that particular moment, would it have been disobedient to God?
Mhm.
I don't know. Like, could Jesus have just gone to the outskirts of Capernaum? You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
if he had gone to the outskirts of Capernaum, the crowds would have come over there, and he could have preached,
Yeah.
right? But he's specifically rebelling against authority for no reason other than to cause trouble, right? And
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'll rewatch the episodes and I'll see more of what Jesus is going for here.
Mhm.
I'm just more trying to reflect on, as a storyteller, why you would choose to put the Son of God in such a questionable circumstance. I'm not saying it's impossible.
Mhm.
I'm not even saying it's implausible. I'm just saying, for me, it seems like a questionable place to do it. It just seemed like controversy for the sake of controversy.
Mhm.
And it seems like they were wanting to end with a really shocking moment. And so they were like, this is how we want to end. And so we need to work all this other stuff together to get there.
Yeah.
But when you look at it, it really makes Jesus' motives very questionable.
Yeah.
Which is fair because you don't know Jesus' motives.
Mhm.
But I'm more likely to give, like if the inspired word of God
Mhm.
gives that confusion, cool. If an author, like if a fictional creator chooses to put Jesus in that way, I'm more like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. What do you feel about all that?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, I think the scene with Matthew and Peter having a conversation ahead of time is really kind of what changes it for me, just because, especially really in these 3 episodes, we're seeing, I mean, in previous episodes as well, but in these 3 episodes, we have seen a more established ground with Matthew and Peter and Jesus and their relationship with one another, and the trust that Jesus puts in them, and how he shares probably more intimate information than he does with some of the other disciples. And so when you have those 2 people conversating back and forth, to see that it's not just one of them that thinks it's a bad idea, but then there's 2 of them. And then you see at the end that, well, there was things that happened, and there was not necessarily anything productive maybe that necessarily happened. That does kind of change things a little bit, because you had 2 people that are well trusted, that we've seen that, Jesus approves, and they have this conversation. It's like, that is kind of weird. And I think that maybe, I'm trying to think about maybe like the writers and their motivation. A big thing with The Chosen is that they're always saying, like from the beginning, to say like, get used to different, and like stirring up the water.
Yeah.
And I see how maybe this scene was very much motivated by this in multiple ways.
Yeah.
By Jesus, confronting, Pharisees, big groups of people, but then also confronting Thomas, his own disciple, in this really hard situation where Raymond dies.
Yeah.
And so I see they are trying to tackle these controversial topics, and they're probably trying to stir the pot and get used to different. But I would agree that I don't know if it's the smartest way that they could have done it, or maybe the most effective way. Not saying that's necessarily wrong, but I see how these scenes are probably being motivated by those same themes that they've had throughout all of their seasons of they get used to different, to stir up the water. Because we see in the Gospels that Jesus is willing to do stuff like that, but usually, like you were saying, there is something very intentional that comes from it, and there's not as much, I guess, intentional things that come from it in this scene.
Well, yeah, because like the thing is, like this scene, like he clarified, like it's clarified that this scene is on the Sabbath.
Yeah.
Jesus does that all the time, right?
Yeah.
Jesus loves doing miracles on the Sabbath because Jesus is, to be fair, he is a troublemaker in the Gospels.
Right. Yeah.
Right. He likes to confront the leaders.
Mm-hmm.
But this Jesus, like you're asking, like, what is the ultimate like productivity here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he does heal the blind man, but the main reason he heals the blind man in this one is for a different reason. Like, like whenever you actually go to the Gospel of John, like this. Okay, actually, I've got a lot of thoughts that are kind of combining here. Let me read this one comment here because this kind of highlighted one of the other issues I had. This wasn't even the right setting for Jesus confronting the Pharisees, was it? Wasn't that in Jerusalem? Yes. That's another issue I have, right? This issue right here is another issue. Not just because it wasn't in Jerusalem, but what they did right here. is they combined like 4 or 5 different Bible stories together. And this is what I was saying way back in the spoiler-free section, where I was saying that what they did is it's almost like they realized they're running out of time and they need to get us to the Passion Week. And they're like, oh, crud, there's all these really significant Bible moments we need to get to, and we're going to blend them together.
Cram it in.
And so what they did is they blended them all together. And as a result, all of them suffer and all of the messages are changed, right? So Jesus, in John chapter, it's either 8 or 9. I think it's chapter 9. And it is John chapter 9, right? John chapter 9 is when Jesus heals the man born blind, right? And it's literally just him and his disciples walking by, and they're in Jerusalem, first off, right? They're in Jerusalem. They ask, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And it basically plays out kind of like how it shows up in the show, right? Jesus spits, he puts the mud in the guy's eyes. But since it's set in Jerusalem, he doesn't have a bucket of water brought to him. He actually has the blind man go wander through the streets of Jerusalem and wash himself off in the pool of Siloam, right? And so, and even that has a certain message in the Gospel of John, right? And then this explains even more stuff whenever later on the Pharisees confront the guy, because this guy has never even seen Jesus, right? He is literally talking to the Pharisees, and he has seen so many other things at this point. He's never even seen his Savior face to face, and he is willing to defend Jesus without having ever even seen him.
Yeah.
And then they even took out my favorite moment with this guy, because in the Gospel of John, they keep badgering him and they're like, tell us your story again. And he finally says, he's sarcastic. He says, what? Do you want to become his disciples too? Right? And they didn't even include that part here, right? And then it's only after that in the Gospel of John, whenever the guy leaves and he runs into Jesus. And then Jesus introduces himself and the guy's like, oh, wow, okay, cool, right? So that's one story, right? And they changed the context of that because it's in Capernaum. And now in the show, it's less about actually healing the man. And Jesus is really just doing this as an inciting event to make the Pharisees mad.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the thing is, in the Gospel of John, it does make the Pharisees mad. But here, they're all connected, right? Because in the other one, the way it happened is Jesus heals the man, Jesus leaves, the man goes, and then it's through the man's testimony that he gets in trouble, right? In this one, Jesus is there the whole time, right? And he literally says ahead of time to like Shula and Barnaby, I'm about to preach to get on to the leaders, right? Because they're leading badly, right? So Jesus makes it clear that his goals are to cause trouble. And so he's not actually serving the man here. He is using the man as a vehicle to make people mad. That changes how that whole thing breaks down. But then what they do is they also take the woe to the Pharisees, right? And that is something that Jesus does. That's actually from Passion Week, which is weird because they're going to dedicate like a whole season to Passion Week, but they're taking stuff from Passion Week, which is also in Jerusalem, and they're moving it here. And even then, like it didn't hit the same because they were rushing through it, right? So you have him saying, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees. And then like half of it, it's like you hear him saying it in the background while other scenes are playing out.
Yes.
And you're like, no, like because the woe to the scribes and Pharisees, when you read them in the Gospels, like that is in like the final week. And Jesus is laying these out because he knows by saying these things, he is going to die.
Yeah.
Like he is making these people so mad that they are going to hire somebody to betray him so he can get killed.
Yeah.
Right. But for some reason, they took that stuff and moved it here. And I don't know why.
Yeah.
Right. It was almost like they just wanted to show Jesus making trouble. Right.
Yeah.
And then there was even other stuff that Jesus said that were like picking and choosing from different parts of the Gospels. And normally they weave it together so well. But this time it was like they were trying to cram so much together that all of them fell more flat and it felt so much more rushed. And then it all ends up culminating in Rhema's death. And whenever we left the theater, we weren't even talking about the biblical moments. We were so distracted by Rhema's death that when you leave the theater, you're not even talking about, like, you literally had like 5 biblical moments, which should have all been super powerful. And they fell flat. And then the last thing you left in somebody's like mind was a totally fictional storyline about a fictional character who died.
Yeah.
And like that's your takeaway from watching a Jesus movie. I'm like,
Yeah.
like that's why like the ending of this episode frustrated me so much because I was like from a cinematography perspective, it was filmed well.
Yeah.
Right. Like it was just from a storytelling perspective, it drove me insane. Sorry. There was my rant. I'm gonna have more to rant about. Just wait. Let's go over to you.
Yeah. I was gonna say that something that kind of discouraged me, not really discouraged me, but just kind of like made me think. Whenever we were in the theater and the moment that Rhema dies, like you hear everyone in the theater like have this like huge gasp. They're like, like what just happened?
Oh, and people were bawling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the only thing that was discouraging for me about that is that you just had Jesus go on this like long discourse and like talking about all this, which yes, it was very like crammed and there was a lot going on and stuff like that. But there's part of me that's like, I don't know. We didn't gasp about like what he was saying to the Pharisees because I mean there was like serious stuff going on, but instead it was like gasping about Raymond, which isn't a bad thing
Yeah.
because that was a shocking moment. Like it
Mhm.
would make sense. But it's like, I don't know. It's the same idea of like you leave the theater and you were mostly thinking about what just happened with Rayma, but there was like a lot of stuff that went on with Jesus too, to where like I feel
Yeah.
like both moments should have had a gasp kind of.
Yeah.
And I feel like for it being like a Christian show and being in a movie theater, you have like a better chance of people who are probably like non-believers going. It would be, I think, really good for there to be a lasting impression of something that was more biblical than fictional for
Yeah.
people to ponder on or think about, because something like that could be a seed into the mind of a non-believer. Not saying that it can't be. It can be
Yeah.
like with how it is. But I think that just the fact that that kind of was more of the lasting impact whenever you left, I guess it would have been cool to see it the other way
Yeah.
too.
Well, because like
Yeah.
if you think about past seasons, the mic drop moments have usually been biblical ones,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you've got like
Like when
Peter.
Mary,
Well,
when
well, I was gonna. Oh, the Mary ones, I guess, kind of biblical, but like
yeah,
you've got Peter catching fish,
yeah,
right? You've got Jesus calling Matthew from the booth,
yeah,
right? You've got all of them entering into Samaria after the whole, Jesus talking to the Samaritan woman.
Nicodemus kind of.
You've got Nicodemus, yeah.
That's a
You've
big
got
one.
you got the walking on water at the end of last season.
Oh yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like all of the big moments have been biblical.
Yeah.
Whereas in episode 3, the biblical moments were ultimately just like filler to get to this big like death scene. And once again, like I think a lot of people are going to have an issue with Jesus allowing Rayma to die. That is not the issue I have.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have an issue with that at all. My issue is that the emphasis, like you're literally leaving this theater and the only thing you're thinking about is that, oh wow, I just watched this whole Jesus thing, and the biggest takeaway is that a fictional character went through a fictional death, and this is going to shape probably the rest of the season. And I think I know where they're heading with it, right? I think that this is going to affect things like later on in the season, we're going to see Lazarus come back to life. And when you read the Gospel of John, chapter 11, like Thomas is the one who says, "Let us go with him and die," right? Like I think this is probably going to set Thomas on a very pessimistic route, so that he's going to be like, you know what? Let's do it. Like it's almost like Thomas is just like waiting for himself to die like Rayma, right? I think it's also going to pave the way for whenever Jesus resurrects. That's probably why Thomas is going to doubt, right? Because he's going to be like, unless I see him, I'm not going to believe, right? I get that.
Yeah.
Right. So I could see where they're kind of laying the groundwork for it.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like they could have done it some other way.
Right.
To where it just feels very strange to me. Like you're creating all this like ambiguity. And it just seemed kind of forced. And like, to me, it kind of makes me sad that the focus was there. And as a result, all of the biblical stuff was rushed through.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you've got like the biblical stuff is just like rapid fire being rushed through and the stories being kind of altered. And it was more like just like a stepping stone to get to this dramatic moment.
Yeah.
Which is entirely fictional.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I don't know, like I like to defend the show, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I like to do on this channel. I really like to be sober-minded, and especially when other people hyper criticize something, I like to come in and like try to like say, slow down, take a deep breath, let's approach this with wisdom. And I'm hoping that we're still approaching it like that now. Because I'm not name calling the showrunners, right? I think they had good intentions.
Yeah.
Right. I think just to me, it bothers me on a personal level. Right. And so this isn't like a personal attack against them. It's just me like reflecting on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything more you want to say there? I mean, I've got more I'm going to say about Rayma's death probably in a second.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything else you want to say
there? I think that the impact of Rayma's death in the scene as a whole, I think is going to feel different whenever you're just watching the first 3 episodes versus whenever we have the entire season as a whole and you can watch the whole thing. I think the impact is going to be different because you're not going to be left with just Rayma's death. You're going to know what happens after, what happens in the weeks to follow. And so I think that the perspective of that and the impact of that and kind of like how you take that scene is going to be altered as we gain more and more episodes, and even as more seasons are added
Yeah.
on. I think that scene is going to change things, because
Yeah.
that scene is going to impact Thomas. Like, that is a very hard thing to get
Yeah.
through. Like, he just saw this person that he thought he was going to marry be murdered in front of him. Like,
Yeah.
he is holding her while she
Yeah.
dies. And so that is a very impactful thing and a very heavy thing. And so I see how the ramifications of that are going to affect all these different scenes and all these different episodes as time goes on. And so I think that it's going to change, and for all we know, it could be like really impactful, and it could be something that actually really helped once we see like more scenes, more episodes, more seasons. So
This person's saying something very similar, and I 100% agree. They said, I think your guys' critiques and concerns are valid. As for me, 4 and 5 will really determine how episodes 2 and 3 feel.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, because like we were saying, episode 3 affected how we interpret episodes 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Context changes everything, right? I mean, that's like a huge aspect of things, right?
Yes.
Like, so episodes 4 and 5 could totally take away all these concerns, like 100%.
Yeah.
Right. And I imagine that they do have an end goal. The issue is, like, when you release these 3 episodes together, you have to treat them like that until those other ones come out. And right now it was like, man, like to me, it's like they dug a really deep hole. Like, they are going to have to, and I think that's another thing that concerns me. It's like they dug such a deep hole that they're going to have to spend so much time getting themselves out of it that could have been devoted. Yeah, that could have been devoted to something else. I think that's my concern, right? And somebody else pointed out here that some people don't know the Bible as well, and so it hits harder. That's probably part of it as well.
Yeah.
Right? Like, to me, I'm also just super passionate about the Bible, and like whenever I see how well it's been adapted in the show, I get frustrated by the lost opportunities. And so every time I see something like this show up, that is like, I'm like, man, like whenever I saw like that sword through him, like I knew she was going to die, right? I could just tell that was going to happen. I originally, at the end of last season, I thought they were just going to write her off because her dad disagreed, right? But then at the very end of the episode, they like showed her like writing to Thomas. I was like, oh, I guess she's not done, right? But whenever I saw that sword sticking through her, I was like everybody else gasped, and I heard people crying. And the thing is, I love Reyma's character, but the first thing I thought, I was like, man, this is going to distract from the rest of the show. Like, like the first thing I thought was like, this is not like this isn't something you just get over in one episode, right? This is going to be something that affects the rest of it.
Yeah.
And every other biblical story that we see adapted is going to have to take this into account, and it's going to affect how we interpret that story, right? That's the stuff that I'm thinking through as I'm doing this. And that's probably because I'm naturally like more pastoral in mind. Like I'm a Bible teacher, right? Like that's what I do. And so for me, I love the show as a fictional show, but it is also influenced by the Bible.
Yeah.
And as somebody who teaches the Bible, I want to make sure that the Bible is being communicated as accurately as possible.
Yeah.
Right. I don't mind them shifting locations and chronology as much, but whenever you start introducing conflict for the sake of conflict and putting Jesus in questionable circumstances, that's when I'm like, ooh, like it needs to be worth it.
Yeah.
And so they can justify it, but it's going to like, like the hole is so deep that it's going to take a lot of getting out of, and all that work is going to possibly detract. I mean, unless they just find all the perfect Bible stories to just work. I don't know.
I would say one, like redemptive quality, something that might help with it. Like in the Gospels, you see a lot of times, I mean, this is usually with parables and not with, I guess, what Jesus was talking about. But whenever Jesus will be talking to the Pharisees, he'll be talking to the crowd and he'll speak in parables or speak about something. And then the disciples don't like necessarily understand like what's going on. And so whenever they go back in private, Jesus will kind of explain stuff to him. I feel like they could do something kind of like that with this scene. There was so much going on. It's really loud. It's going back and forth between Jesus talking and us seeing other scenes. We're hearing Jesus in the background. They're trying to navigate a way to get Jesus out safely. They're trying to do all these different things. They're talking to one another to where they're probably not catching everything. They see their friend get murdered. There's so much going on to where after they get away from the crowds and they have a moment to process what's happening, Jesus kind of sits them down and talks with them about different things. And maybe sorting through some of that stuff with him talking could bring some like redemptive qualities. Like whenever after they came back from their 2x2 mission, I think it was after they came back and they were all sitting in the house and Eden was cooking and stuff. And they were all talking about like what had happened and their different experience. And it was kind of just like this not information dump, but everyone sharing their different perspectives. And then Jesus kind of talking about it. maybe if they had something along the lines of that, that could help iron out some stuff. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think of something that would.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they handle it, because to me, if I was living in this world and this happened, I could see all the disciples being like, Jesus, everybody was telling you something bad would happen.
Yeah.
Like, because Gaius, Matthew, Peter, everybody was telling you something bad would happen. You insisted on doing this, and now Rhema is dead. And once again, Jesus can do that.
Yeah.
But you're like, I think the issue is, like, to me, it's just adding drama, like, to where there doesn't need to be, right? Like, to me, the disciples need to be growing, but now is not like, we're so far along in the show. We're almost at the halfway point of the show, right? We need to be getting to the point where these guys are truly mature, right? And I don't know if now is the time where you should really be putting Jesus in, like, questionable circumstances where they're like, oh man, like that was more last season, right? That's what Peter was going through. Like, Peter, like, we already saw Peter questioning Jesus.
Yeah.
Right. In this, like, how they handle it, like, I don't know, because you could have Thomas go through the same arc, or you could have Thomas just be like, yes, I get it, right? But then that would be like, if they don't handle that well, it's almost like he didn't really love Rhema. I don't know, like,
insensitive.
yeah, it just seems like it's a really weird place to put it at this point in the show. Whereas, I don't know, like, once again, episodes 4 and 5 will clarify a lot of this. I don't want to just, like, speculate about it too long, because this video has been long enough. Real quick, this person said maybe you can chat with Dallas about it. People have suggested this type of stuff all the time, and I've never known what I would ever talk to Dallas about. Like, I'm not good at interviews and stuff. I'd be like, so, The Chosen, huh? I don't know. Like, anytime I've ever seen Dallas, I've always been like, hey, Dallas. And he's like, hey, David. And I'm like, can we get a picture? That's about it, right? But this actually is something that I actually, like, could talk with Dallas about. Like, this, because I want to pick apart his brain.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because once again, I'm not trying to attack. I'm just trying to be like, what was the end goal, right? Because writers, whenever they write this stuff, they have an end goal here. And I know that if they were going to put Jesus in these circumstances, they had to have reasons.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that they, like, overlooked the possibility of it. Like
haphazardly.
Yeah. So I don't know. Okay, real quick, let me just read through my notes here just to see if there's anything I didn't address. Okay, so first off, this is all in regards to Rhema's death. I saw this coming. I'm also conflicted about this unnecessary drama. Hopefully it's heading somewhere. My biggest issue is that it seems distracting from the main story. The whole ride home, it's the only thing we talked about despite all the other biblical stuff in the show, is solely attention from the rest of it. I already addressed all of that. Next thing, I wrote a lot of notes on this. Unnecessary controversy, putting Jesus in questionable circumstances in order to serve an entirely fictional storyline. That is another issue. It's like, it'd be one thing if you were putting him in questionable places to serve a biblical storyline,
right?
But you're putting him in such a questionable place over a character who never even existed, right? Like, I think that's where I'm like, okay, like, if, like, because the thing is, we're going to see this with Lazarus, right? Like, with Lazarus, we're going to see that Jesus allows Lazarus to die, right? Jesus is going to hear that Lazarus is sick. Jesus is going to choose to stay back, and he's going to let Lazarus die, right? So we're already going to see that same type of storyline in this season, right? So now we're just going to have it twice. And in that instance, it makes a little bit more sense because, I mean, Lazarus is sick, and could Jesus have healed him? Yes. But in this instance, Jesus is allowing it to happen when it didn't need to.
Yeah.
Right? Like, Lazarus is like, and the thing is, Lazarus ends with resurrection. For all I know, Rhema will get resurrected, but are we going to have 2 resurrections? Like, I don't know. Like, that would be weird to me as well.
Yeah.
Right? And so I don't know what the solution would be here because Jesus allows Lazarus to die in that instance to resurrect him. And Rhema here, I mean, I guess it could be communicating that he doesn't always work the same way.
Yeah.
But you're putting Jesus in a very questionable place all over a fictional character.
Yeah. I would say that maybe the clarification that would be that, like, the fictional characters and the fictional plot lines, at least from, like, what you've told me, I feel like this is, like, your heart behind it. The fictional characters and the fictional plot lines that are within the story should enhance the main plot line of what Jesus is doing. Yeah. But in this situation, it seems like Jesus is almost the sideline character to Rhema's situation. Yeah. It's almost like, not that Jesus is fictional, but it's almost like the roles are reversed, where Jesus is playing the role of the smaller role of what the fictional character should be, versus Rhema is more of like the forefront character of what Jesus should be. So it's almost like their roles should be reversed. Yeah. Well,
and I think I'm also just trying to look at it from the premise of The Chosen, right? Because the thing is, this show is not simply adapting the Gospels. It is trying to tell a story from the perspective of the disciples, right? And I'm thinking, like, so every like pretty much every scene should be somehow communicating something about what it means to be chosen. And the optics of this make it look like in order to be chosen, you have to realize that Jesus is going to put you in reckless circumstances where people die when they didn't need to, right? And the thing is, I think Jesus has reasons for it. And maybe, like, I mean, it could be to serve Thomas's ark, but this is like the definition of like in literary circles, there's a trope called fridging, right? And basically the idea of fridging is whenever you're wanting to advance a male character's arc, you kill off the female character, right? And that is like comes back from like a comic book where like this Green Lantern dude, like his girlfriend was literally killed and like he found her in a fridge, right? And so like it's called fridging, where it's like, okay, you're doing this, but now you're treating this person like an object, right? You're like, this life means nothing. You're literally taking away this life simply to advance another person's like story. That seems weird to me, like because it also feels kind of manipulative because you like made the characters attached to them. Like it feels like something that would happen in Game of Thrones, right? Like to where it's just intentionally for shock value. You made the characters attached to this fictional character only to rip her away in order to serve another person's plot point. And once again, can God do that? God can do whatever he wants, yes. But as a fictional writer who's trying to communicate what it means to be part of the chosen, it seems like a weird choice because you're making it sound like if you're going to be a follower of Jesus, he might just allow you to get stabbed by somebody when you didn't even need to, right? She did not die a martyr's death. She did not die like serving him. She died simply trying to escape a mob which he caused just because he wanted to make Pharisees mad, right? And if there had been greater purpose behind that mob, maybe makes sense. But people were just like crowding around him because they wanted to hear, and it didn't. I just don't see anything being accomplished there, right? Even if you're being pragmatic about it. I don't know. Let's see what else. I don't have a problem with Jesus putting him or his disciples in danger, but it seems weird to me that he would put random bystanders in danger, like the woman who got trampled, right? Because that was the whole thing. They're like, people are getting trampled. Raymond wasn't killed for her faith. She just died by accident because Jesus rebelled against the authorities. Thomas demands that Jesus heals her. Jesus says, it's not her time. I love you, Thomas. He loves you. I'm so sorry. That was just me recapping what happened there. I still don't get that it's not her time thing. And so I did say that there is an important lesson here, right? Because I do think I get what lesson they're kind of going for. I just don't know if it works. But the important lesson here is that we can't use Jesus as a vending machine to get what we want, right? Like whenever Salome says, ask and you shall receive, they're going against that, right? Thomas is asking. And he's asking for a good thing, right? He wants to marry this girl, right? He's asking for a beautiful thing, and he's not getting it. That's the message they're getting at, right? You can't just use Jesus as a genie in the bottle where you rub the lamp, you get 3 wishes. That's not what Jesus is, right? So that's the message that's being communicated, and that is a good message, right? And it ties to the David and Bathsheba thing, right? But at the same time, it's more complicated than just that, right? I think that's what I'm having an issue with. So theologically, the statement is still true, but I don't know if it proves the point they were going for, especially since with the David and Bathsheba thing, once again, David is being disciplined for sin, right? And so that's why David gets up and worships God. So Jesus isn't a superhero or a magic genie. That's a good message. Yeah, so I was basically just, I don't like to just criticize things. I like to try to find the good stuff in there. There is a good message behind it, but it really does make Jesus look like a very reckless leader. And I think it might even be more redeemed if we'd seen Jesus being a better leader before. But this is a criticism I have for season 3, is that Jesus consistently, like we haven't really seen him leading the disciples much. Like in these 3 episodes we do. In these 3 episodes we see Jesus and the disciples more together as a group. But in season 3, it was like everybody else knew where Jesus was before they did. And I'm like, what makes these 12 special? Like, I mean, he's sending Judas out to go preach, and Judas has only heard 1 sermon. Right? Like to me, like that was a big issue in season 3, is that we don't really see much discipleship behind what Jesus is doing. And so if we had seen more of a background of like Jesus being a very good leader and competent leader, then what we'd see here, I'd be like, okay, cool. But right now we just haven't seen that, right? Like Jesus performs a lot of miracles and he says profound things, but we haven't really seen reason for them to trust him. I don't know. That's just overall, the message is good. I just have a lot of concerns with it, and I'm still processing them. But I've ranted about this long enough. I told you I was going to, though. I told you I was going to.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you want to say about this?
I don't think so.
We've talked for a long time.
Yeah,
I
we have.
apologize.
It's okay.
I think this is the longest live stream we've ever done.
It's pretty long, but it's good.
That's my bad. I know that you're tired and stuff, but yeah. So I will read through all these comments. I'm not going to go through all of them right now, just because I realized how long this has been going and my voice is tired. Yeah, so somebody did highlight this. I will just highlight this. With the miscarriage story last season, we didn't know where it was going until Peter walked on water, so it made it impactful. And so we can kind of see where this is heading with the Doubting Thomas thing.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like we tried to emphasize, later episodes could remove all these problems.
Yeah.
We are simply just voicing our concerns, because that's how you have to look at it, right? We live in a culture where people react immediately.
Yeah.
Right? People are not going to react patiently. We are going to try to be patient, and
Yeah.
whenever we watch those next episodes, we
Yeah.
will address it again then.
Yeah.
But people nowadays, I mean, the reason why we're doing this live stream the day after it comes out is because that's what our culture's like.
Yeah, it's initial
right?
thoughts.
Yeah. If you wait a week, people aren't going to watch this live stream as much.
Yeah.
Right? And so this is our culture, and so I'm trying to address this up front now and try to interpret it from like a more sober-minded perspective if possible, to hopefully fight back against some backlash they might receive.
Yeah.
Or to try to voice valid criticisms if I think they're there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so do you have anything else you want to add before we wrap this up?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Overall, I think it's just good to highlight, which we've already highlighted multiple times, but just to say that The Chosen has really set like a really high bar.
Yeah.
For like Christian media and Christian shows. No, they're not perfect, because imperfect people are making the show, and we're imperfect people, and all of us are imperfect people. But they're doing a really good job with what they have. Like, I mean, they also have a very high task. Like, they're trying to take the Bible, the Word of God, and put it into a TV show format. But overall, like, they are doing a really great job, and they are like breaking grounds for Christian media. So I thought it's a good thing to highlight, just because, I mean, we talked about positive and negatives, but I think that's a good thing to leave on, is that they are doing really amazing things, and it's really cool what Dallas has, put together with and his team. But
I couldn't say that better myself, because I stand by all that. I think this person puts it, my concern, like in one sentence. This is going to put people off Jesus for fictional reasons.
Oh yeah,
that's my concern. Right? I'm hoping it doesn't. I'm hoping people are patient and give it time, because, like I said, like you just said, the writers have earned our trust. Right? I know a lot of people are quick to criticize a lot of stuff. Typically, I can get behind it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to pray and hope that they like that the later episodes fix this.
Yeah.
And even if it doesn't, you know what? That's okay. Right. Because even if the later episodes don't fix it, it's okay for them to mess up sometimes.
Yeah.
That's all right as well.
Yeah.
Right. But the biggest concern is that it could turn people away, and it would be really sad if their biggest fumble was for a fictional purpose. Right. Which I guess that is the better option than totally just like misrepresenting the Bible itself.
Almost like something heretical.
Right?
Yeah.
I would rather than misrepresent something that's fictional. But I don't know that. But yeah, you said that really well. So yeah, for anybody who's watching this who's associated with The Chosen, thank you for all that y'all are doing, and I hope that y'all didn't take this criticism too harshly. I hope that you will appreciate it and respond if you get a chance to and stuff. And people are saying in the chat, I think how Dallas responds will help. I think that's true. Yeah. And usually Dallas does a really good job of that.
He does do a really good job.
And even if there's questionable choices, he's usually he does a good way of digging his way out.
Yeah.
And so I have trust that they will.
Yeah.
We're just trying to voice our concerns just to think about it.
And so, he has a really hard job too, like having to create the show, and he has so many eyes on him. And honestly, which is really sad, is that Christian audiences are almost more judgmental and more rude than worldly audiences. So he's in a really hard position, but he's doing a really good job. So hopefully all of us can extend grace and mercy to him in the same way that Christ does to us, because
and I understand why people are harsher in Christian circles, is because we realize this is important stuff. Right? Sometimes we become Pharisees, and we don't want to be that. But in all these circumstances, we just have to realize that, you know what? I have messed up plenty of times. I've misrepresented Jesus plenty of times, and I am not in charge of this super huge TV show, right? They have so much pressure on them.
Yes.
And whenever you include fictional stuff, there's going to be things that are difficult, right? Because I mean, I've been struggling with this with the whole book thing I'm trying to write, right? There are places where I'm like, man, I need to get people proofreading this, because I don't want to misrepresent Jesus, because I'm kind of writing something kind of similar where it's like, you know,
On the
you're
edge.
trying to elaborate a little bit, and you have to be careful,
Mhm.
right? And sometimes you're gonna mess up. That's okay. But I look forward to seeing the rest of the show.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're gonna do plenty of different. Well, I'll probably handle most of the other chosen stuff just because this isn't really as much her thing. She just does this because she's amazing. But hopefully you'll be with me for all these live streams.
Yeah.
And then you can expect all sorts of other chosen material on this YouTube channel over the course of the next few months and years. But yeah, so thank you all so much for joining us. I'm
Yeah.
sorry we didn't get to say hi to everybody in the live chat. I've been reading them, like usually basically like
Mhm.
whenever I'm silent, she's talking. I'm trying to listen to her and read, and I
Yeah.
think she's been doing the same
I
thing.
have.
And so we have been reading your comments, and I'll probably go read through them again later. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And if you haven't done so already, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share this with your friends.
Yeah.
Because we like talking with y'all.
Mhm.
And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brianne, for joining us.
Of
And
course.
hope y'all have a great day or evening, whatever time it is. I don't know where you're at right now. Have a great something. Keep a smile on your face. Don't let anybody steal your joy. Remember who you are. And of course, Maranatha. Ba, 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 ba.